So welcome everyone to this. Oops, I think I am have done to this session of the Salon of Classical Architecture. Today we're going to talk about floor plans, and we will have a guest later on. So this is going to be an overview of floor plans. We're going to talk a little bit, and we're going to give some tips about how to design the floor plans, and then we will go for the critique. Has anyone ever seen this floor plan? We can call this the first floor plan of history. Have you ever seen this? Not everyone at the same time, please.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, you know what it is. What it is.
Mesopotamia, I would have thought.
Yes, you're not so far. It's Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. Is the first building in history. You can call it like that. It predates the origin of cities, and I thought it would be interesting to see the first floor plan, the first time the human being created a plan. They did this, and this is a reconstruction of how they may have looked like. We don't know if they were covered or not, but it is that's the sort of idea that they know. Then we move forward 6,000 years, and this is Çatalhöyük, and this is the floor plan of the first city, as you could call it such. Çatalhöyük is very interesting because what you see in dark, these are walls, these are not the streets. It's a city, but doesn't have streets, and all the houses have their own their own hearths, their own accesses through the roof. You can see here a bit of a reconstruction. And they show some courtyards. This is an old reconstruction because apparently what they have discovered is that the courtyards, they were not courtyards, they was basically just rubbish bins. So they were throwing all the debris, all the anything that you could imagine that was unusable was thrown there. And then and the houses were used to live. They were having very interesting cults and social custom. Like for example, they were exchanging the heads of the deceased among the houses as probably as a sort of communal rituality. But yeah, that is actually the first plan. And this is the first representation in history of a floor plan. This is from Sumeria, and it's a very simple house. And even if it is 4,000, almost 5,000 years ago, we can clearly see how it works. No? You can clearly see that this is the outside, and then you enter into this room. You enter into this room, and there is a room here that may be a courtyard, probably is a courtyard, and then all the rooms are connected to it. This is the Mediterranean house. Things haven't changed much in 5,000 years if you see that way. So the moment something proves useful, it carries on being useful. So that's what I mean. The historical introduction I wanted to give. This is someone did a reconstruction of the house with the measurement because apparently through all this description are telling you about the dimensions. Apparently this is part of a sort of legal document. So someone was trying to deal with property rights, etc. So meaning that as soon as we discovered writing, we started discovering about legal issues. So, and this is the aspect that it may have looked like, assuming it was two-floor house, could have been two flooring, could have been one floor, could have been uh, anything else. But we know that there were houses with two flooring, so that's why this one they represented into houses, into stories. One move from here to Egypt. Egypt is, in the case of Egypt, we have much more representations and ideas of how the house might look like. This is a sort of high middle class house with a garden big enough to have a small boat for pleasure, and also an inner garden with more dependents. This is the house of someone very well off. But in any case, thanks to the enormous amount of funerary elements that we have in the Egyptian tombs, we know how all their houses were. This is considered a typical house as well in Egypt, with several rooms entering through the courtyard. Another very beautiful but simple example of a house with a staircase and a terrace. These were called soul houses because it was a house for your soul. So that the Egyptians believe in a very rich afterlife. So when you were dying, you would live in that. That model was giving you like the granting you the access to a house like that. They also had as very small figures that were the would be the future servants. So the more little figures you were buried with, the more servants you have in your afterlife. The bigger your house you were buried with, the bigger the house you would live in your afterlife. To the point in which we are having also beautiful models of a house with a garden and with a colonnade. So we have a much better and clearer idea of how the houses in Egypt were, but still they are a variation of the Sumerian house. And from there, I mean, I'm doing like big jumps in history. From there, we go to the Roman house. This is the Roman house as described by Vitruvius, which has all the elements that we know and we are very used to, in which you have the atrium with impluvium, several rooms around. This C is just a corridor called wings in this case. And then you have the triclinium with the area to eat, which was the dining room, and then the peristyle. So it was like a sequence house going from more public to more intimate. We had like in one of the previous sessions, we have an expert on mosaics who was talking us. Some of you might remember when he came and he was explaining us how the mosaics would change as you were coming into the house, going from more decorative to show off the power to more calmed, still luxurious, but a bit more calm to show more intimate gathering and more things were more meaningful to the owners as opposed to something to impress. But these were the houses of the rich. These were the houses of the nobility, of the patricians. The majority of the people, as still today in Europe, they lived in flats. And even in Roman times they had flats. This is the house of Diana in Ostia or the insula of Diana in Ostia. Half of it, I mean, the ground first and part of the second floor are still intact, so you can enter and you can see the house and how they lived. And once you take a look at the house, they didn't live very different to how we live. The only thing that they didn't have was running water and toilets. But other than that, they had two, three, four-bedroom flats and always following the old style stratification. The upper you were going, the smaller the apartments, and because you were poorer, so less people were living there, so they were much more dense. I'm going to skip the whole Middle Ages about plans and housing because the whole idea is that we get an overall view. This is the Alhambra in Granada, so we have gone from first century to 14th century. We're going to move a bit backwards because I'm more interested in focusing on 17th, 18th, 19th centuries, and also where can you get sources for yourself to understand more about floor plan. This is Alhambra, and this is what I wanted to show you in here is that every single element individually considered has a symmetry, has an axis. And we're going to see a lot the importance of the axiality versus symmetry when you are designing a floor plan, especially talking about classical architecture. And once you see this composition, it looks like very whimsical. No, everything is randomly positioned. But once you consider them individually, once you see the tower and the courtyard of the Arrogants, they are aligned. And then the whole courtyard of the Lions is aligned, creating an axis with the different rooms. But then the rooms, there is a symmetry, having rooms to the side, but the rooms themselves are not symmetrical. You have one hall here and one hall there, so it's the whole. You have the whole courtyard, creates you a sense of symmetry, but then it's substituted by axiality once you start entering, or local symmetries. For example, you have once you enter into this hall, into this room, you have symmetry either side, as well as here. Here all the spaces are like quadruplicated. You have side alcoves then one room, then another room with a viewing gallery, and then it's connected to the rest of the complex to several corridors. Same as well as the as and in the process you have smaller areas that create transition spaces. So in this case, we're talking about a palace, but it's giving us key points on how to design a floor plan. We need to focus on the important spaces and then create drama in the transition spaces. That's what we're going to be talking. On top of that, at the end of or at the beginning of 16th century, the architect Pedro Machuca, at the request of Charles V, the emperor, builds a palace in the Alhambra. And this palace breaks a bit the whole idea of the multiple axialities and local symmetries. It's broken on behalf of an almost quadruple symmetry of a palace. But well, when you are in the outside, you have the feeling that the palace is completely symmetrical. Once you analyze the plan, it isn't. But then it also has a very powerful element, which is the round courtyard. The round shapes has the virtue of creating an illusion of equality to all the doors, to all the access, to all the openings, to different rooms, so that you feel that you are in a regular space wherever when you aren't. But that's what you get from there. And on top of that, you also have an octagonal element that somehow is also linking you with the axis of the courtyard. So you see a bit the difference. Also, many people hate the palace of Charles V in Alhambra because a big portion of the palace had to be demolished to do it. We don't know what was there because there is no record of what was there. People don't nowadays. People don't believe that there was any big and luxurious part. Otherwise, they wouldn't have demolished it. But there are reconstructions who suggest that there was another courtyard symmetrical to this. We don't know. But at the same time, being a bit malicious, people don't like the Palace of Charles V because it looks different and it broke the original building. But at the same time, they will like modern architecture where everything is a break point from the original. No? People will say, oh, Charles V did a horrible work in the Alhambra, destroying half of the Alhambra, but everyone is happy with Daniel Libeskind at Dresden. So it's a bit the double thinking. No, everyone hates the Palace of Charles V, but oh hey, you have to love the royal collections in Madrid because it's modern, it's our time. Well, that's basically what Machuca did. Machuca was even behind the times because he was doing mannerism before mannerism. Apparently, Machuca was landing in Italy in the 1510s. So all the pre-mannerist ambience, he lived into it, and then he was able to produce something mannerist before the mannerists started doing things at the end of the 1520s. But enough about mannerism. If we have to talk about classical floor plans, we need to talk about the Villa Rotonda because everyone loves the Villa Rotonda. Everyone is in love with this wonderful building, and they say, "Oh, I want a house like the Villa Rotonda." And the Villa Rotonda is a wonderful building. That's out of question, but it has a big problem. It's a show-off house. Cardinal Almerico built the Villa Rotonda for parties. So the house doesn't have a strict functionality. I think it was Schinkel, or I don't remember if it was Schinkel or Goethe, who said that the Villa Rotonda was a house to arrive, get a chair, sit in the middle, and look around, and that's it. Because it's very difficult if you have to organize your life around this house. It's very difficult. Starting with what is the toilet, what is the kitchen, what is everything. Well, there are functions that are downstairs, there are functions that are upstairs, but you need to move through very narrow staircases to get to the upper floor. And then the whole important things happens on the piano nobile, of course. But this whole house, which is all this quadruple symmetry, which is one of the very scarce buildings that has this quadruple symmetry and actually works, it's just a house that it's um for parties and for showing off. It doesn't even have the whole um structure of power and land administration that the Palladian villas had. We're going to see another one, and you to compare, still in the high end of the Palladian villas, but you will understand. So this is a beautiful element. This is what happens when you apply symmetry to the last extreme. So that's why symmetry, applying symmetry in a plan, full symmetry in a plan, might not be the best of the ideas. It was the best idea for Cardinal Americo, for sure, but might not be the best idea for your country house, might not be the idea for your client's flat in the city center. So that's what you need to bear in mind. As opposed to that, and not all the Palladian villas have that. This is the Villa Barbaro, which is supposed to be like the best or the most luxurious of the Palladian villas, done for the Barbaro family, who are the Palladios patrons. And in here, you can very clearly see you still have asymmetry. Externally, there is asymmetry, but internally, you start to have something different in behalf of axiality. You still have staircases, you still have a cruciform plan, but the functions start to change. You have the staircases that will take you elsewhere, and then at least on the sides, you start having different functions. You have the stables and you have the granaries, and all that in an agricultural environment. So in this case, we have a function, a proper function, and it is not just having parties and showing off. The Barbaro were also administering the land from the villa. That's why you have all these galleries where the workers could meet before the day or after the day to discuss with the patron. You have a facade with a balcony, which is where the patron would give words to the people, and also you have the typical Marquese or agricultural buildings to the side so that the patron could still keep everything close to them, and also to demonstrate and to show the sort of leisure character of the bill, or mixed leisure and working character. Palladio built a wonderful nymphaeum at the back. So that's a bit the difference with the Villa Rotonda. We have symmetry, but also we have symmetry organized towards an axis, and the axis is also very important. So you don't have the quadruple symmetry and it still works. So we're going to see a little bit how all this start to change, and the importance of making a good balance between both of them. This is the plan. This is the plan of Villa Malcontenta, Villa Foscari. And here you can see as well how things that are to change. You have two different staircases, a first sign of differentiation. We have probably a staircase that is taking you to the ground, and a staircase that is taking you up, or family staircase versus a staff staircase. Or maybe two staircases to take you either side of the villa, because this has double height. So you have a lot of elements that are starting to differentiate the parts. Now, we have been talking about Palladian villas, about symmetry, and at some point, the Palladian villas are very interesting to analyze and to read, and you might feel tempted to find how they were organized. They are organized. I'm going to leave to every one of you to find the wonderful metrics behind the Palladian villas. But please, when you read this book, read it with care. The Mathematics of the Ideal Villa, another essay, especially the Mathematics of the Ideal Villa by Colin Rowe. This is a modernist manifesto. In here, Colin Rowe starts analyzing, based also on Bitcover, starts analyzing the proportions of the Palladian villas. And then discovers that all of a sudden, Le Corbusier follows the same symmetry and the same principles to design his villas. Therefore, Le Corbusier and Palladio are the same, and therefore, it's pointless to look at Palladio while Le Corbusier is doing the work. So that's a bit that's what did the article. It's itself problematic, because it starts linking several facts, several levels, and then the conclusion is biased towards modernism. That's the problem of reading all these. In many cases, they're very interesting and well-done analyses. All of them contain a heavy bias to modernism. It's the same thing why you might think, or you might have heard, that Ledoux was a precursor of modernism. And Ledoux was a course architect that created with his penny-shaped building and all the Salinas chalks, etc. He challenged the establishment. No, Ledoux was an architect of the ancien regime, and Ledoux was hated by everyone because Ledoux did all the barriers of Paris, which were the tax poles. The tax points where they would charge people to come in and come out. Ledoux was one of the architects of La Gabelle, who were the public servants who were in charge of the salt tax. The wonderful city of Chocs was a salt factory. So it was taxed. It was one government monopoly. And Ledoux was the architect of all that. So when the French Revolution comes, the first thing they look at is at Ledoux. And Ledoux feared for his life because Ledoux had been always working for the monarchy, and he feared his life because he was a symbol of the monarchy himself, same as Lavoisier. While, for example, others at Boulay, they were too old and forgotten by the time of the revolution. So Boulay was a very successful developer. Boulay was a developer. We need to remember that when he was old, he was asked to do some interesting drawings to teach students, and then he did all the wonderful cenotaph to Newton, etc. But the whole career of Boulay was doing developments. Again, why did Boulay and Ledoux end up being so hated? Because when Napoleon III started doing all the reforms of Paris, the first thing that they destroyed, that Haussmann destroys, is the barriers from Ledoux. Why? Because they were a limit to the city expansion, and everyone hated them. So that's why Leduc was hated. Leduc was hated because he was a symbol of the ancien regime, not a symbol of a left modernity. And that's something that Kaufman mixed things in the 1930s. And so, oh, because this guy did like pure shapes, and Le Corbusier and Mies are doing pure shapes, so these guys are the precursors. And because everyone hates them, it must be because they were modernist. No, on the contrary, all of them. The only one who could have passed as different was Lequeux, but was more because Lequeux was crazy in the creative sense than in a modernist sense. So it's important that, I mean, I think it's good that you read this, but beware of the conclusions. And there are many articles and books, and we talk a lot. I recommend a lot of things, a lot of readings, and it's important. Now, to see a good analysis of Palladian architecture in terms of proportions and a general analysis of proportions in the Renaissance, Architectural Principles in the Age of Humanism has two chapters, one chapter dedicated to Palladio and one chapter dedicated to proportions in Renaissance. Very interesting because here is well with cover start talking about the sequence of proportions of the Palladian villas and how that is related to music, not to modernism. So that's the key point to consider in here. So said this, it is more or less clear that when we're analyzing a floor plan, there are two elements that we need to bear into consideration. One is symmetry, and the other one is axiality. And while both of them are related, they don't have to mean the same, or they don't need to have the same conclusions. And the first element I'm bringing here for you to take into consideration, this is the Palace of Versailles. And when you are facing the garden, here is the Gallery of the Mirrors, which is itself enormous. So this is making you an idea of the scale of the palace. And I haven't brought it here, but in all its greatness, Versailles is about two-thirds of Caserta in Napoli. So bear in mind that, I mean, when you see Versailles and it's so great, think about Caserta, which is even bigger. So what we have here is that we have a perfectly symmetrical facade facing the garden, but if you start taking a look at the petty details of the plants, you find that there is no symmetry inside. So we have a wonderful symmetry to the outside, and then we have elements that start like breaking the symmetry. So if we see from the garden, it looks perfect. But if we see from the street, the first thing that is calls attention is the chapel. The chapel is in the position where another wing should be, but it takes the proper shape of a chapel, and then the rest of the palace continues its own way, being symmetrical. But even here, where you have three courtyards to the right and two courtyards to the left, and all the elements that are here, they are not symmetrical, but they follow local symmetries and axes, in the sense that once you start considering all the elements in an individual way, they will be aligned with another elements of the bigger scheme of the symmetry. And that is what makes Versailles so great. Versailles and many other plans that we're going to see in a little bit more of detail. One of the elements is the so-called the enfilade, which is like all the doors are aligned. You see one enfilade here, you see one enfilade here, and another one here. So this is important, and you see that in many houses that all the doors are facing the same direction because it gives you a sense of depth. So obviously here we're talking about big scale architecture, but we're going to move to smaller architectures. Another element that once you see it from the outside looks completely symmetrical is a monastery of El Escorial in Spain. And even when you are inside there, you feel that the building is purely symmetrical with a power symmetry to the point even that these two, let's call it side or facades on the side, they don't have anything relevant behind. They're just they're just that way to keep some rhythm to the facade, not to have it such a long one as you have on the sides. But once we look at the plan, you start realizing that we have one central element, which is taking you access to the church. But then once you move to the sides, even the courtyards are not symmetrical. And then you have certain rooms to one side, other elements to the other. There is axiality has precedence over pure symmetry. So, and I want to insist on that. We're going to keep talking a little bit on that. Going to UK, we know very well that Palladian architecture became one of the symbols of British architecture. I have said in other places, I mean, for those of you who haven't been in other classes, Palladian architecture triumphed in UK not only because Inigo Jones went at the beginning of 17th century and bought the drawings of Palladio from the grandson of Giulio Romano. No, it was not only that had an impact and an influence. The big influence was that Palladio does an architecture for a sort of middle nobility that has that it's powerful enough or it's wealthy enough to have a house in the countryside and a palace in the city, but isn't powerful enough to live out of each of them. So these people had to take care, manage their estate. They couldn't rely on someone managing the state for them, and also had to live in the palace in the city because they were merchants or they were public servants. So these people had to keep both elements, and hence the size of the Palladian houses. If you compare the villas, Palladian villas, with other bigger houses that you could have on the time, like the Palazzo Te in Mantua or El Escorial, or the Palace of Charles V, you realize automatically they are not very big, and that they have a big connection with the country. That's probably the only one that is an exception is the Villa Rotonda, which is a proper show of Villa, but that's also because Cardinal Almerico was a very powerful person. But Barbaro, who had also the Barbaro family, was also given cardinals to the church, etc. They were not so powerful, so they had to combine both activities in the building. Anyway, this is Cheese's house in West London, and this is the first attempt of a proper Palladian house because this worked very well with the structure of the property in UK, where after the English Reformation, the kings confiscates all dissolves and confiscates all the monasteries and then resells or gives the land away to his favorites, with the intention of creating a low nobility that would be extremely loyal to the monarchy and never challenge them. So the Tudors have come after a war where there were very powerful noble houses involved, the War of the Two Roses, etc. And he wanted to create a sort of a stable landed gentry that could live off very well of their benefits and the privileges, but wasn't powerful enough to challenge the monarchy. So these people settled in the old monasteries, in the old houses, and they started, some cases, to live on them. They demolished the abbeys, they built new houses. Most of the Jacobean and Elizabethan houses are basically based over the ruins of an abbey, but and then in many cases they were then later demolished and rebuilt as country houses in 18th century. So that's why at the beginning of 18th century there is an Italian called Giacomo Leoni or James Leoni, and this was a very clever person. He was the person who he translated Palladio, but he translated his own way. He translated it, adapting it to the English taste and to the English needs, so that it could be used by patrons, and patrons would see their ideas for their houses in there. To the funny point, in which, despite being extremely successful, the book would also be heavily criticized because it has more it was more Leoni than Palladio. And then eventually, Lord Burlington, in the middle 17th, 18th century, would do another translation of Palladio into English, which is still nowadays the best translation of Palladio. The one done by Isaac Ware and Richard Burlington. Lord Burlington is the best English edition of Palladio. So if you can find that one in English, just be sure that is a facsimile of Isaac Ware or a transcription from Isaac Ware and Lord Burlington. If you want to read it in English, if you want to read it in Spanish, the translation from 1797 by José Ortiz Izal is the best. Although it's always better to go to the original, but if you can read it in Italian, obviously the 1570 edition. But when you do to the translation, be sure that you are getting the right translation. Read who has translated it. Read the credentials of the translator and see, because sometimes they are done by philologists who might translate, who might do the best translation in linguistic terms, but not the best translation for architects. And that's something important to consider when taking into consideration any translation. Because you still now can nowadays find translation of Vitruvius into English or Portuguese or Spanish, and they're done by Latinists, and the text is extremely difficult to read because it has been a translation done by a Latinist who might have struggled a lot with the very obscure Vitruvian terms. Well, the ones done for architects by architects are easier to read because each other we understand. Vitruvius understand us, we understand Vitruvius, we are all colleagues, um, um, and between firemen, we're not going to step onto our houses, as we would say in Spanish. Entre bomberos no nos vamos a pisar las mangueras. So that's the idea. So coming back to Chiswick House, Chiswick House is a beautiful example of a Villa Rotonda, but in this, or of emulation of the Villa Rotonda, but in this case, it can be used. It was still used for parties. It's not, it doesn't have the sort of the gravitas of the Palladian villas used for country exploitation, but it is a perfect suburban villa. It's not far from central London. And as you can clearly see, I mean, it has a symmetry, but not so much of a double symmetry, and all the spaces are changing a little bit. So the main element that you can see here is the beautiful octagonal room, but then even the galleries and the spaces facing, this changes slightly. So you have one octagon to one side, one round room to the other side. The ceilings change slightly. So all the elements from the outside, once you see the building from the outside, nothing is going to tell you that the inside is going to be so different. And each room is different, right? Starting with the velvet applied to the walls, the damask applied to the walls, to the frescoes, and to all the elements. But once you see the plan, it's much more dynamic than the Villa Rotonda. And there is a sense of circulation as well. So you enter very clearly, and then you have like the so-called closets, they're separate. You enter, takes you to the saloon, takes you straight away to the galleries, to the garden, and then from the gardens you go back to the bedrooms. So it's also telling us about a functionality working sort of inverse you or in inverse W. You enter and then go back. It works on the other side. You enter and you can go to more intimate spaces or cross the house in this sense. That's the importance of talking about the axis and the axiality within the symmetry. And this is the wonderful outside of the villa. There was also a plan to extend the villa either side with more extensions, which they did in two stages, end of 18th century and during 19th century. And at some point, the 19th century addition was demolished because it was not apparently not of the same quality than the 18th century one. Another room, I mean, I like bringing the English country houses because one good thing that the English achieved in 18th century was a good sense of organizing the house. And it was well known around Europe about about one of the ways of keeping a household was the English way, which among other terms including a sort of English layout of the rooms based on elements like the gallery. Can you please let's see if I can mute everyone. Oh yeah, hello, hello. One second. Okay, everyone muted. Sorry. So these things happen is a problems of life. So as you can see here, Osterley, this is Osterley Park, again close to central London. It's one of the very first works of Robert Adam. And this is a very interesting building because it was an old Jacobean house that then Robert Adam, the owner inherits and asks Robert Adam to do something with it and to reform it. And Robert Adam did a very beautiful sense of a space, sense of transition, which is very important when we're doing a house, the sense of transition and the drama associated to it. So to enter into the house, you need to cross a portico, then pass through a court, and then you enter into a hall that is very beautiful with two exedras either side, and then some small transitional spaces. Some of them are actually corridors, or they are just storage. From there, you move to the gallery. And all these English country houses, they had a long gallery to ensure that people could walk during the winter. Well, during the winter, during the spring, during the summer, during the autumn, because it's all time raining here. So that's why you have the long gallery. So because so that everyone could have a walk, could enjoy, and also they come from. It's very interesting because nowadays you see the long gallery as the essence of the Victorian house, but the origins of the long gallery are actually the Germanic and the Nordic invasions when everyone was living in the Great Hall. So it was only a single, enormously large barn where they had everything. No, all the people were living there. They were having lunch. They were eating there. They were cooking. All the animals were there. If it was raining, they were slaughtering the animals there. If they do their needs, every type of needs were done there. So that's the proper origin of the long gallery that then eventually gets a bit more refined over the time. I mean, when you see, for example, especially movies about Vikings, and they are all in the Great Hall, that's the precedent of the long gallery. There is of course a long way because between the Vikings drinking beer in the long hall and Lady Violet criticizing Lady Wandsworth after having tea, but yeah, it's a bit the same set of aggressivity. So and again, this has a sort of inverse U-shaped plan. It's not typical. It's not that it's typical from the English houses. These two ones happen to have that. Once you go to the gallery, then you cross to the different areas, to the dining room, the staircase, which is amazingly wonderful, and then the library, and then you have the children's room and other secondary rooms. And then once you go to the other side, you have another set of state rooms, the drawing room, tapestry room, Etruscan room, which is wonderful, and the bed chamber. A quick thing for the non-English speakers, the drawing room is not a room which contains drawings. And I'm saying this because I mean I had the same problem when I was learning English. I was always the drawing room. Why in heavens do they have a rooms for drawings? What is the painting room or what is the library? No, and the drawing room comes from the very old terms of withdraw, which is that to retire. So you were retiring to that room. It was a sort of nowadays the drawing room has become a formal room. But before, the drawing room was more what we could call today the living room or the den or the snack. So that was the proper family intimate room where they would retire to rest after having been all the evening having tea in the long gallery. They would go to the drawing room to rest. So that's a bit or for example, when you see in Downton Abbey, especially you see those scenes where all the men are having lunch and then they start smoking and they start talking about manly stuff. And then they say, shall we join the ladies? They were joining the ladies in the drawing room, which was more like a more relaxed room, while the other principal room would be the gallery, would be the main room to receive and as well as the library. And this is the how Osterley looks to the outside. It's pure symmetry. It's pure symmetry, but I mean, you see, I mean, it has a lot of very interesting elements, like the two towers that are much older. They come from Elizabethan times, and then Robert Adler just plunge the super neoclassical Roman portico, no, because this is not classical. Well, this is Roman classical, but it's not like the sort of Renaissance Vitruvian classical. And once you are there in the house, especially on the rooms in this area, you feel that you are in Rome. You are in ancient Rome, especially the Etruscan room is amazing. So if you ever come to London or if you're in London and haven't gone to Osterley, go to Osterley. It's amazing experience. Nowadays, unfortunately, the entrance is not done through the portico on the court, but through the staff entrance in the staircase. So that diminishes you a little bit the experience. Because in order to do the experience, you need to first enter here and then you find that the entrance door to the hall is closed. So you need to go back and enter. But it's an amazing experience when you enter, you see the portico and then the court and then the hall. It's a sort of sense of experience. And when you see the court it doesn't have anything interesting at all. You can see here. It's very simple court, but it's just having crossed the portico and having feeling that in and out space. That's a proper in and out space. Not what the modernists say about having the kitchen doors, the kitchen opening to the garden. This is a proper in and out space. And see, I mean, it's very simple. It's brick. There's some stone. There is a lot of stucco in there. So it was a cheap construction, cheap in the sense of budget, not in the sense of bad quality. But and again, I mean, talking also not only about floor plans, but talking about restoration, intervening in the heritage. If Rob, I mean, I guess that if Robert Adam was well, he's a contemporary architect. We have an architect called Robert Adam, who is a wonderful classical architect. I hope I should that all of you know the Robert Adam I am talking about, from Adam, founder of Adam Architecture. But this building should theoretically pass a planning application nowadays because it's actually done according to the spirit of the famous or the infamous Chart of Athens. Why? Because Robert Adam did something new that was dialoguing with what was existing in a different material. So these are ways that there are ways of doing what the modernists want without doing what the modernists want. Now it's the point of discussing if the Chart of Athens actually has any power or is valid at all nowadays in 2025. And the answer is no, because it has been absorbed by all the heritage regulations and superseded by the heritage regulations. And none of the heritage regulations use the ambiguous language of the Chart of Athens, which means that all the decisions about building and rebuilding, classical or traditional, they are political and not theoretical. So it's also thing for thought, food for thought in that sense, because it helps you to understand, because once they are well put ahead, they cannot deny you to build it. That's why you still build classical today. That's why you get all these beautiful country house extensions that they are done, that they are done, still done nowadays for many of the classical films in UK and abroad. Why? Because they don't contravene the Chart of Athens, no matter how much the modernists scream against that, or we all have been told at the School of Architecture. Coming to the idea again to quadruple symmetry, but not so quadruple, it's a Holham Hall. This is again a wonderful a, a house by Robert Adam, and as you can see very clearly, I mean, it was intended to have quadruple symmetry. There were two wings that were never built, but at the same time, the axiality is what matters. We have a central hall. In this case, it's a sort of hypostyle hall with the columns, taking you to a round saloon, and then different rooms taking you around. In this case, you can move in all directions. You don't have the sort of double um, of U-turn or everything. So you have your dining room, you have the area taking you to the kitchens. Two wonderful, very wonderful, actually, carved corridors that don't have any other purpose than connecting the wings, and are very well done in that sense. And then different rooms taking you around. And in this case, the staircase doesn't occupy a very important position, as in many other country houses they do. The staircase is a very important element. And finally, you have a family wing that is big enough to host a family of several members, and is where currently the family is living, or where they have been living for most of the time, because these houses, the way of using these houses was that in summer they would be used for parties, and in winter they wouldn't be used at all, because people will go to London to spend the winter season in London, and they would spend the summer season in their country houses, traveling from country house to country house. So very much the things that you see, the glimpses that you get to see in Bridgerton, for example, is the way the high classes were living. Although, I mean, yeah, Bridgerton is a bit tacky and kitschy. I prefer Downton Abbey or any movie from Jane Austen. You see a lot in Sense and Sensibility, or Emma, or what's the other one, Persuasion, or Pride and Prejudice. It's sort of a more classic yet ironical way. And Holham, as a site of history, is very interesting because it was owned by the Curzon family, and you can see an old church here. The whole house was built on top of the village, so there was a medieval village here around the church, and then the family just evicted everyone, all the tenants, and built the house on top. But they kept the church, so there was an easy way. They didn't have any excuse not to go to church every Sunday. That was the advantage that they got. They didn't integrate the church into the house as properly. If this would have been a Southern European, either Spanish, Portuguese, or Italian Catholic house, the church would they would have demolished the church and integrate the church into the house. As well, in this case, they kept the church apart, recognizing the charm of a perpendicular Gothic English church, and then they build the house around. Very interesting is this garden facade with the sense of a triumphal arch. And coming back to the plan, you can see here the perfect symmetry. Well, in here you have on one side the library, and then you have a beautiful ante room, giving you space to the dressing room and then to the stateroom. So see a bit the way of create of the importance of the axe. Or when you are in the inside, the axiality is more important than the symmetry. But at the same time, you need to respect the symmetry. So it's a very interesting gameplay between the two of them, because once you create this axis to go from the salon to the anteroom, and you create these two excedras either side, the excedra needs to be centered to the window, therefore marking you the the point where the other wall will end, and at the same time ensuring that, unlike in the outer facade, the central point of the dressing room is in a wall, not in a window. So it's setting up. You see, all these axialities are setting up totally different dynamics inside the house. For example, see, like the door isn't aligned at all with the window, but almost with the space between the chimney and the wall. You have another door here. So see how all these elements are started to interact. So when you go to this dining room, you have windows that are aligned because they are primary spaces to connect them, and then you have a tiny opening here to connect the gallery. So you see a bit the two different levels. Another one in which this time they achieved quadruple or a sort of quadruple symmetry, the project was completely finished, is Holham. This is Kettlestone House, and this is Holham Hall. And here they achieved the quadruple symmetry. It's a very interesting house. It was built in brick, so that probably justifies the that they achieve building it. And again, it has a wonderful, majestic, one of the most beautiful vestibules you could ever imagine is in Holham. And then it's organized symmetrically, but once you take a look at the interior, all the elements start to change. You have one courtyard here that is much smaller than the other. You have the dining room very intelligently created with two secret doors, one to hold the china, and another one with a staircase to take you to the kitchen below. And then you have several rooms at different sizes to create a different hierarchy, and then beautifully shaped library that is connecting you with different part of the house. So I think you start getting the idea of how all this of the difference between axiality and symmetry and how both of them need to work together in a floor plan. And this is also how the house looks to the outside. And of course, in every English country house, it needs to be attached to the stables because obviously it's the only way you could move around. And in some cases later on, they added the conservatory or the orangery. So that's that. But it gets you a little bit of the idea, and also think as well that when they were doing this, they were having the inspiration of Palladio to build them. So it's sort of if Palladio had been in England, he would have done the same. And it is because the conditions of Veneto at the end of 16th century were very similar. The socioeconomic conditions of the Veneto at the end of 16th century, even if it is a very materialistic approach, was similar to the conditions of England in the 18th century. And also the Venetians and the English always have had their own ways. They always have some similarities. The Venetians always love to do things their own way, like the English do. So they had that own way. So it somehow linked northern Italy with England in that sense. Not being, I like making this comparison because Venice was all about trade, the same way as England. They didn't worry much about the inner land. They were only more worried about expanding in a very similar way than UK. And then all of a sudden they had to deal with a lot of land, which is Venice had to deal with a lot of land after several wars at the end of 15th century. So they just acquired all the Veneto, the terraferma, and they didn't know very much what to do with it. Same way the English, they had the Reformation, they confiscated all the monastery. The church owned a lot of land in England before the Reformation, so they didn't know what to do with it. So they split it into smaller parts, which was good to control the rebellious nobility. Think that despite or if you exclude the episode of the English Civil War, the whole nobility, the whole ancien regime in England was very stable. If you compare, for example, with the ancien regime in France, yes, France, we forget that France at the end of Louis the 13th, beginning of Louis the 14th, had a massive rebellion, La Fronde, and always there was a big fight between the high nobility and the crown, which ultimately led to the French Revolution. One of the reasons of the French Revolution was that the high nobility refused to sign some laws uh, approved by the monarch, and then they said no, no, only the general state, the État General, can approve them, and they convoke they very stupidly convoked the Star Generals, and they didn't realize that things had changed. They were not like in the medieval times, what the nobility could actually overthrow the king. Well, in England, this wouldn't happen because Henry VIII ensured that they had a low nobility that would also control the House of Lords. So that's a bit the 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 similarities. And if you compare with Spain, for example, that didn't have so much nobility in Spain, you had the great houses who were always copying all the position and they were always conspirating against. And that's the thing. You didn't have that so much in England, but you had a much bigger middle nobility that was able to afford this. While in other countries, only the high nobility could afford palaces 4 times the size, but much less than here. So you know, go everywhere you go to around England, you have beautiful houses like this. Some of them bigger, some of them smaller, but you have plenty of them everywhere, and they are all from the same time, from 18th century. Jumping outside UK back to the continent, this is the music pavilion on the Chateau de Loveciennes, and I was talking before about Leduc's, and this is a bit what Leduc's was doing during his life. So this is the architecture that people would identify with Leduc's. Now, who was Leduc's client for this building? Madame du Barry. And who was Madame du Barry? King Louis XV last lover. And unlike Madame de Pompadour, who was supposed to be glamorous and nice, apparently Madame du Barry was a bit more what we could call nowadays bitchy. So she people didn't like her. So while people appreciated Madame de Pompadour, people didn't like Madame du Barry. She was much younger than the king, so she was still alive and relatively young by the time the French Revolution started, and everyone hated her. And there was a very big diplomatic row because Marie Antoinette didn't want to talk to her, and she was required to talk to her because she was the mistress of the king, so she needed to show some respect. And the two of them interchanged a very, very famous sentence because the only way they found to solve the situation was she was walking one day around Versailles and Madame du Barry stamped onto her. So she told her, "There is a lot of people here today." And she said, "Yes, madam." And then that was the end of the crisis. So she was even insulting her, talking about too many people in Versailles, including her. But that was the only way they could solve. Anyway, this was built for her with all the money that she amassed from being the king's lover. And that's another of the reasons why they hated Leduc. He did a building for Madame du Barry, which was very hated during Louis XVI time and during the Revolution. But if we forget about the politics and we look at the architecture, so there is nothing modernist about the pavilion, the music pavilion. And you can see a bit the plan in here, where again, there is a symmetry, but the important thing is the axiality. Once you start seeing, you don't have absolute symmetry on the inside. On the outside, you have, but on the inside, you have one axis, you have the porch, you have a very beautiful vestibule, which doubles up because it's a small building, doubles up as a dining room. You have the buffet, then you have a small cabinet and wardrobe, and then to staircase taking you to downstairs and upstairs, and then as an area to relax, what you could call the drawing rooms, but also having different shapes. And once you start seeing all the single elements, everything engage with the precision of a Swiss clock. You see how the etc at the bottom of the salon is perfect enough to create the cabinet that is aligned with the buffet, and then in order to absorb the full symmetry, the salon adopts an oval shape, while the other salon has a square shape. So you have a lot of different things that work together because they are aligned. And this is something to keep very well in mind, because sometimes when we are designing a house, when we're designing a building, we forget about that. We think that if the building is symmetric on the outside, it needs to be symmetric in the inside, that everything needs to be symmetric. And no, the axis is more important because that's what your eye perceives. Now, that doesn't mean that you should avoid symmetry. That means that the symmetry should be subservient to the axis. And these are you can see here the elevations and a bit of the upper floor plans and the lower floor plan. Obviously, I mean the kitchen is always at the bottom. Well, as you can see here, I mean, it's a single story building, and the other staircase is just to do functional access to the levels above. And another one, which we are about to finish the sequence of building, is the Petit Trianon. France again built for Marie Antoinette. So this was for the good one, no? The Pavilion de Musique was for the bad girl. This is for the good girl. Even she ended up being on the bad side too. And again, you see, it's a beautiful square. The facades are different, but still symmetrical. But then once you enter, you have a lot of different things happening. You have a principal staircase, secondary staircase, a sequence of rooms, and then everything is aligned. You don't even have a big axis that connects the one side of the building with the other. But once individually considered, the Petit Trianon is one of the biggest and most wonderful examples of neoclassical architecture. And once you see the plan, you might feel confused that it doesn't have the quadruple symmetry of the Villa Rotonda. But the quadruple symmetry is only achieved in the Villa Rotonda. There is no other building that has it. All the other buildings have layouts like this, which are not chaotic. They are organized across axes, enfilades, and local symmetries. And that's why I wanted to bring it so that you take a look, and the scale is enough for a medium house size. And finally, I wanted to bring this one. This is Miramar House in Newport. This is one of the houses of the Gilded Age. There is a series as well about the Gilded Age, which I recommend everyone to see because it's not only, I wouldn't say not only for the architecture is very good, and it's also apparently a lot of it has been digitally created. It's not like they have gone to a building and done it. I think like you have like the old families and you have the new family in the series. The new family, all the interiors have been done ex professional. Some of them are just digital interiors, so they're very very well done. So what this house is much later from the series. This house is actually from 1914, and again, it's a very very strict symmetry. Oh, you have a very U shape, but then once you start entering, it's 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 very it's fluid. Obviously, it's an American house. It's fluid, but there is no symmetry at all once you start considering the inside. So you enter into the vestibule. You have two halls taking you to the dining room and the living room. You have a small reception room for private visits. You have another pantry here, obviously close to the dining room. A very functional area just in the front of the house, which you would never expect to have that in older houses. So this is a sign of modernity, adding this, and then you have like the cold room, a small toilet, which is good as well because you might think, oh, why would you have in the front facade the all those functions? And if you think about that, and we're going to see that how it is, if you have a wonderful facade open to the gardens, why would you have all the functions facing the garden? Why would you have your bathroom, your kitchen, and all the elements facing the garden, while the area facing the entrance is is the one that you're going to use less? And where you're going to bring guests, they're going to cross the vestibule and then go to the salon. There is no need to that. And then once you see the upper room, you have your single staircase, and then all the rooms are symmetrical, individually considered, but the overall layout doesn't have to follow a symmetric plan. You see very clearly on here on the bedroom, on these two bedrooms. I mean, well, all the boudoir, men's drawing room, all the elements might look symmetrical. The layout doesn't have to be fully symmetrical, and that's okay. So this is something to bear in mind, and I cannot stress it more because it's a point where we all stuck when we're designing a house. Where do we stop the symmetry? Assuming we want to go for symmetry, where do we stop the symmetry, and where do we start relying on enfilates and axis? So this is but this is obvious. This is the entrance of the facade, and this is why it is okay to have the bathroom facing here. Once you go to the back, you have the wonderful views of the sea. Why would you want to see the otherwise beautiful entrance when you have a much more beautiful back garden? And this is 1914. So this is a bit more than a century ago. So it is also important to see the dates because we are not we're normally told about 1914 nobody was doing it. Everyone was just thinking on war. Le Corbusier was just sharpening his pencil to start doing the bill reviews, etc. That it wasn't so much like that. So it's a bit to understand the difference between what history is telling us today and what was actually being built up until the 1940s and 50s. So to summarize, what do you need to do when you start a house? The first point is start with the program and understand the client needs. You need to know what your client wants Why? Because just to say things, some clients might prefer to have to enter straight away to a living room. Others might want to have a special boot room, which anyway you need to have in a country house. If you're living in the countryside, you need to have a proper boot room or mat room. Or you might want to have a small toilet in the entrance, or maybe not. You may want to have a separate ensuite, or maybe all the bathroom need to be ensuite. You might want to have integrated wardrobes, not integrated wardrobes. You might want to have the kitchen integrated with the living, yes or no. All that you need to take into consideration. Then you need to see what they call the internal axiality and local symmetry. You need to connect all those parts together, and you need to see how you connect them. Do I have enough space to create like an ante room or a series of ante rooms that are going to distribute everything as if they were corridors? Or do I need to go from room to room? Each of them has its advantages and disadvantages. I mean, but nowadays we tend to have everything under a corridor, but a corridor can look very miserable. So you need to think about how you are differentiating all that and how the different parts of the building are related to each other and how that expresses into a desirable outside symmetry. So it's a process of coming backwards and forward. There is not a single way. There is not a recipe to do a classical house because there is not a recipe because every client is different. And also don't forget the drama. Don't forget that the house is to have fun. That you need to have a sense of transition. That you need to enjoy going from the living room to the bathroom. You need to enjoy staying in the bathroom. You need to enjoy going from the kitchen to your bedroom. It needs to feel nice. Doesn't mean that you need to have a local corridor or sorry a long gallery or anything like that. Means that you need to enjoy the spaces that you're creating. The sequence of spaces is very important. And of course, the external symmetry should be encouraged, especially if we are going for a very classical design or most of the traditional ones. That's the way to go. And now, as it is usual, I'm giving some recommendations. So I have said that there is no such a thing that gives you a recipe to do a plan. So the best way of learning how to do plans is looking at plans. And a good one, I like always quoting the this great monograph in several volumes of McKim, Met and White, because it was a very successful American firm. And the good thing of all the latest stage of the Beaux-Arts architecture or the Edwardian architecture in UK is that they had the chance of living with the modern world. They had the chance of incorporating electricity. They had the chance of incorporating bathrooms, dumb waiters, elevators, things that are obviously like they look like stupid to do or so normal to us by now. But at the same time, we always complain, why do elevators look so ugly? Why do bathrooms look so ugly? Why? Well, it's not because you're not making meta white, it's because we have lost that connection between the tradition and the contemporary living. There are ways we will have a session later on about bathrooms and about kitchens. But the good thing is that McKinney and White, they're good for that because they integrate both all the old style world with the new ways that the Industrial Revolution had brought. However, there are some books, multiple books in French, especially that give you ideas of country houses. There are some of them in English, which I have quote, but this is one of many. This is from 1743, and this is giving you a lot of plans and elevations. So take a reference of the book. I mean, and if you and another the other day someone wrote me asking me for reference of the books. If you don't remember, I will be very happy to share them. And these ones are very important, are very useful at all level. So Radford is the name of an architectural company called Radford Architectural Company, and they publish thousands of books. They're Americans, so for the English and European market, it needs to be handled with care because they offer a lot of typically American details that might not work very well for an European context, but there they are to learn and to find inspiration from. Radford wrote about practically any architectural topic you could imagine, a lot of them about construction, so they're very good to know a little bit about semi-industrial construction techniques, a lot of timber frame, balloon frame, etc. They're very interesting. A lot of construction details, a lot of joinery, paneling, doors, windows. They're very good for that. And the Frederick Thomas Hodgson was an architect who was working at Radford, but also wrote his own books, sometimes in collaboration with Radford, other times by himself. So the two of them are an excellent source for a bit more modern plans. So all the other ones that I have shown you are more classical, McKimbet and White, they are more grand, but these ones are more domestic at a domestic scale, which might be very interesting for any of us, because that's at the end of the day, that's the average of our clients, the domestic scale. Another one, which is very good for everything in general, is the Précis des Leçons of Architecture, the summary of the lectures on architecture by Durand. This is a basic book of architecture. This is a book that a lot of people consider is a precursor of modernism, but once you read it, there is no modernism at all on it. It is a book of its time. It's a book born after the French Revolution. It's a book born for the new state of France. It's a book that was written for the people who were going to give architectural shape of the Napoleonic Empire and all the new needs of the new state after the French Revolution, which was more bureaucratic, more administrative. They needed are not only administrative buildings, they needed museums, they needed courtyards, they needed libraries, etc. So Durand explains you how to do all of them, and also talks a little bit about how to compose parts. So it's a very interesting book. It has been in French mostly. There is a small Spanish translation by Rafael Moneo, and there is finally a translation in English by the Getty Foundation, which is available for free. So that's the book on the right. So you can download it from the Getty Foundation, and it's free. It's not like you are not making any problem. So you have both. If you want to download the book of Dugan from the National Library of France or from archive.org, or the one from the Getty Foundation. Also, as a detail, see how much into the revolution was the system by Dugan inserted, that he says the printers are still putting the date on the French Revolutionary calendar, year 13 of the revolution, 1805. So it helps you to understand a bit the context in which it was built and why it was built. And one of the things that the modernists claim about Dugan is that Dugan talks about the abolition of the orders. And Dugan doesn't say that. Dugan says that the people in the School of Architecture, they are there to learn architecture. They should come with the length or the orders length. That he's not there to waste his time explaining the orders. The people should know the orders. And if you don't know the orders, don't worry, he's going to give you some measurements. And that doesn't mean that not to use the orders. That doesn't mean that they are not going to talk about the orders, which was in the ancien regime was a big part of architecture, where there would be a debate: which Doric should we use? Should we use the Doric from the theater of Marcello? Should we use the Doric from Vignola, from Serlier? What Affaire de Chambre say about this? So Duhan wants to omit all that debate, which he considers part of the old times, and move towards just doing good architecture. We know that we have to use the orders, so these are the orders what you're going to use, do them. It's very different to say not use the orders at all. So again, now it's available in English for all of you to read. It was available in Spanish from at least 25 years ago, which is when I bought my edition. But yeah, go to the to the primary sources. It's very important that you go to the primary sources. I think I have recommended this before. I cannot stop recommending Elements of Formal Design in Classical Architecture by Arthur Stratton. It's great book, available at archive.org. You can buy it for very cheap price as well. And it contains a lot of individual elements to design. So we will be talking as well about the staircases, and most of the part of the staircases is going to be extracted from Stratton. So it's a very good book for you to read. The elements of style, I am bringing it. I have been, I am a bit critic about this book because the book itself is not extremely useful, but what it is very useful is the bibliography of the book. The bibliographic index of the book is very, very good and useful. The book itself is good to understand a little bit the periods, but it's very much of introductory level. So if you are starting to know about this, the element of style is an excellent book for you. If you're already knowledgeable about all this, it's a good book to go to the end and read the index of bibliography, because there is where you can go to the primary sources. So it's a very well documented book, but it's the problem is that it has to be very generic. It's covered 600 years of interior design and architecture, so it has to be limited. But the good thing is that it was very well documented and they kept the index, which doesn't happen always in many of these books. So again, if you can find it, go for it. And a part that I haven't touched because it's another world is the more Victorian and picturesque and wishy-washy higgledy-piggledy architecture, which obviously we would require not only one but several classes, because it is a bit of an implosion. No, all the other ones were keeping an idea of axiality, symmetry, etc. Victorian architecture in many cases ditches everything for the sake of just doing pretty stuff. So for having picturesque mansard, this here there, the layouts change. The layouts become much more whimsical. Sometimes on the other hand they become super functional. Then they everything is put on a second way. The plans and the elevation are put in a second way on behalf of the internal distribution, and then everything would be worked out retroactively. Some people like working like that. It works in certain context, and that's why I'm leaving a couple of books. All the books by Woodward, he wrote several of them about architecture that are very good. They are like the ones I showed you from Hodgson, but and Radford, but in terms of more Victorian picturesque architecture, and a good compendium, a good summary of the books have been published recently under the title that you see in pinky color. So go for it if you find it, but also bear in mind that what it is on that book is also showing a very specific times on architecture, and it's more like the Victorian picturesque side of architecture rather than than the more neoclassical one, which is what we are more or less guiding you and focusing you across this series of lectures. And there is another source, Pinterest. Surprisingly enough, Pinterest is becoming very good source of inspiration. Some years ago, it wasn't. It was just a place to see, oh, I like this color, I like this pottery, I like this picture, blah, blah, blah. But now, since Google is becoming worse and worse, all the layers of knowledge of Pinterest, all of a sudden they're starting to work and make sense. Now, Pinterest is mostly, it's a sort of images, but it's mostly for private boards. So you pick the images and you create your board based on images, and it doesn't allow you to get images, or it's very difficult to get images from outside Pinterest. So it works like a closed library. But I think that some people have been uploading a lot, but a lot of really good classical architecture, and now it's becoming a good source to find classical architecture. So use Pinterest. I would say give a try on Pinterest if you think that Google is not doing its job, because it's not doing it anymore, unfortunately. So take a look at Pinterest, because you will get very interesting surprises. And then if you find something and you don't know what it is, you can always do the inverse research, inverse engineer research on Google, and then it will tell you which building you are seeing. But the algorithm is getting very good, much better than the algorithm in Google. Nowadays in Google, if you put floor plan, Kenwood House floor plan, for example, or Osterley Park floor plan, is going to give you floor plans of houses that are being sold in the area of Osterley Park. While before, you were getting the first 20, 50 images were plans at different resolutions of Osterley. So that's a bit the difference. You put classical floor plans, you're going to get plans of houses labeled as classical in the area where you live. Well, in Pinterest, you will still get the neoclassical plans. So thank you very much. This is the this is the end of today's sort of glimpse overview on floor plans. And if you have any question, now it's the time. I think that Haib is here as well or not. I don't think. Oh no, he's not here. Unfortunately, I don't know what. Oh no, you're here. Good,
Yeah, I'm here, Professor.
perfect. So before I let you speak, does anyone have any question? Yes, Herbie, you raise your hand.
Hello there, and thank you very much for that. It was very interesting. Um, Obviously, the Newport house there, where you say it was backing onto the sea, has various constraints around it, and obviously it's always the job of the architect to consider space. But when we're talking about axiality, how much do the cardinal points of the compass come into it when you're placing a garden? Obviously, being in Europe, you'd ideally want those sorts of things south facing. But have you got any thoughts on that?
You mean how important is the axis when you are considering when you are building on?
The actual like magnetic axis, as it were, north, south,
Ah,
east, and west. Because I noticed that none of the examples you had was sort of dead on. They were all sort of somewhere between, and I was just curious if that had any bearing.
I
If
think
you
that
had a completely flat piece of land, how would that affect it?
it has an effect. If you imagine that we have the perfect playing area for you, we will still need to consider where in the world it is positioned. That's why
Hmm.
there is no house that is perfectly oriented to the south. There is no house that is perfectly oriented. Why? Because you will normally be looking for a specific location. I think that the only buildings that will be looking for and will have as a must to have a fully north orientation are the artist studios because you need to ensure that you're not going to get any sunlight but plenty of daylight any day of the year. But
Hmm.
the magnetic north doesn't have full like a proper full oriented to the magnetic north. It doesn't have much sense because what you want to have is either to embrace or to avoid the maximum amount of sun of south sunlight because even the whole thing that the sun comes from the east, it doesn't come from the pure east. It comes
Hmm.
always from southeast. It goes from southeast to a slightly uh, northwest.
Hmm.
In
Right.
summer, I think is the only time of the year where you get a little bit early in the morning, you get a little bit of sun coming from the north. So,
Hmm.
and that's it's too early in the morning for the artist to be awake because we all know that artists wake up very late, so it doesn't matter. So that's why you get that. So I would say that no, I mean the axes are important internally for the house, but
Hmm.
a pure magnetic orientation, I think it will give you more trouble
Hmm.
because you wouldn't get the sun as you like than the other one. That's why all the houses are slightly moved. In other cases, you have elements that are fixing you to to put something like a lake or a forest or a
Hmm.
previous road. So
Yeah.
that's what I would say.
Super. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for coming. Well, I mean, and don't forget that we have still so hype. So, Francisco,
Thank you, Pablo, for the exposition. Very
yes.
complete and very useful, really. My question was about what about, I mean, I know it will be a complete another class, but what about when the plot is not like the opposite question of what about when you have to plan in the city, for example, but you want to keep classical
We,
um,
actually, we will talk
language,
about
but
that.
then you have a very regular plots and yeah.
We'll talk about that next week when we will, or in 2 weeks' time, when we will be talking about urban elevations. So
Okay.
we will talk about that then because it's a totally different way because obviously it's like you have the way of considering the exterior is very much depending on the street layout because you may want the A to blend with the street or you may want to enhance a focal point. So that
Okay.
that
Okay, yeah,
we'll see next week
totally.
on that.
Okay, okay. I'm asking also because as I told you, I want
Yeah,
to have a review with you
we will review the
about
project
our
after.
project.
We will review the
So
project
yeah,
after July.
okay. So it's very related up with that because we're in a very regular project. I will show you, but I think it will be very useful. Thank
Right.
you, Paul.
We'll do that after Sohaib. Isaac,
Thank
Yes, thank you very much for your conference,
you're
Pablo.
very welcome.
My question is, besides the Villa Rotonda, what other important buildings of classical architecture have quadruple symmetry?
I'm going to open the question to everyone that can help me with this because I can only think pure quadruple symmetry. I can only think on the Villa Rotonda. And I mean, I think that it might be a couple of English country houses or small follies with quadruple symmetry. Maybe some pavilions in Versailles may have quadruple symmetry, but they are more entering more into the follies than into the category of a full house. But I'm trying to think, and no, because some of the maybe the Palazzo Te in Mantova, but I don't think so. It doesn't go for fully quadruple symmetry. It's a cloister around which the buildings go. The Scorial could look a bit like quadruple symmetry, but it doesn't. So I am struggle to think about one. Um, I don't know if anyone actually. I mean, you got me there. I don't. I'm not sure. There must be, especially at the level of follies. But I am trying to think about one that has actual quadruple symmetry. Doesn't come any of them to my mind. I mean, we have a caritative soul here helping us. Classical social housing. I will go for this now, Nicole. Um, I don't think so. I'm going to be bold. I'm going to say I don't think so. But I actually would love to open this to everyone. This, I mean, Isaac has a very daring question. And I dare everyone to find a quadruple symmetry plan. Maybe some architecture in India, maybe some architecture in Japan. It might have quadruple symmetry in China, but I'm trying to think because not even Aztec architecture of Mayan you could find quadruple architecture. I'm living now
No,
completely
no
out
one.
of
No
classical.
one.
No
The
way.
exception made of one of the pyramids, no one other.
Yeah, maybe the what's the name of the big pyramid in Chichen Itza? Is it no, it's not El Caracol. It's
Chichen Itza
yeah,
pyramid.
yeah. That pyramid. Yeah, it's quadruple symmetry, but we don't know how they're inside. So we should consider what's happening inside the pyramid. Um, because not even the Great Pyramids in Egypt they are quadruple symmetry because they look quadruple symmetry outside, but then the inside they have the labyrinthic. I'm going to be I'm going to be bad. Quadruple symmetry, the Pietro San Pietro in Montorio.
All right.
But that's
All
because
right. Thank you.
it's wrong.
Thank you very much.
But it's because it's round. So I don't think it's a valid answer. But I don't think it's very interesting question. But I am not sure if there are others that are not a direct copy or inspiration of the Villa Rotonda. It will be good. I'm going to search on to do the search and see if I can find them.
I can only imagine a building in the times of the colonial age in Mexico.
Uh-huh.
It's a it's a temple. It's a church, and it is called El Pocito. El Pocito is a church near to Tepeyac,
Uh-huh.
and it has quadruple symmetry, and it's the only example I can imagine in Western architecture in Mexico.
You mean the chapel of El Pocito, you mean?
Yes.
Uh yeah, it's I mean, I'm going to share it in the chat so that we can all see. I don't. It's it has a very interesting quadruple symmetry of the chapels, but then it has the front, the narthex and the entrance. But it's very interesting. But those are the only quadruple symmetries that you could imagine that you could get. That, I mean, I'm thinking on that sense, probably San Carlo delle Quattro Fontane, San Andrea del Quirinale could also enter into that category. San Luis de los Franceses in Sevilla, some of things like that could actually fit within the within that category. So I think that the moment we start digging, probably we will find some. But I think that they're a good example. This whole conversation a good example of how important axiality is versus the full symmetry. I hope that I have answered your question, Isaac. But
Yes, thank you very much.
you're
Thank you.
very welcome. But I think it's a good thing to there.
Yeah.
Both
Yes. Thank you.
everyone here, students, anyone listening to us through YouTube, because we are now live in YouTube as well, to bring us some examples of quadruple symmetry. So I'm going to go for Nicole Vieira answer, then we're going to leave Sohaib, who is very kindly been waiting for us. So I'm studying architecture in Brazil, and we are learning about and using to design social housing. Do you know any example of classical social housing, or is inherently a modernist concept? No, social housing is not a modernist concept. I think that it is very extended, that thing that modernism brought social housing. Modernism was very interested in social housing. Modernism was very interested in improving the life of people, so social housing, but they were more interested in engineering people's life through social housing. So social housing existed before. England had a long tradition of that. You still around London, we have the Peabody houses and the Peabody Trust for that. They existed to bigger or certain extent. They existed. You have more utopian examples like the Phalanstère, the Family Stair in France, and you had plenty of them. It is not a modernist concept. Social housing existed before. It would be foolish to assume that they came after. What modernism did, especially after the Second World War, was do mass production of social housing, which is a totally different thing. And which in the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union, they were called the Khrushchevska and the Brezhnevska, which were a symbol of the corruption and decadence of the period. And nowadays they are turning them down. But no, I mean the social housing existed before. You were having, I'm typing here, things like the almshouses, probably not the best examples, but they were there. They were also called workhouses. So these were the very, very, very old ones. But then you had, for example, the Peabody Trust and very similar ones to the Peabody Trust, who did wonderful buildings at the end of 19th century. You had in many Spanish-speaking countries, you had things called something similar to this, Patronato de Casas Baratas, which was like a foundation for cheap houses, which were not cheap at all, but you had something similar. Probably all the Spanish countries might have some Spanish-speaking countries, apologies, may have had something similar to that. So this was something that were institutions that were working in Spain, but probably Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, all the Spanish-speaking countries may have something similar. Brazil as well may have something similar to that. So go and check them. They are very interesting. They are a good blend. And then you have a bit more experimental ones like the Phalanstère and the Family Stair. And then examples like New Lanark and Harmony, a New Harmony. So those predate the modernist experiment on social housing. So it's very interesting to see all the precursors, because also the modernists lent from these experiments, and they were trying to improve the conditions that were already improved. So it was not a thing of the yeah, here you have, that's the Peabody Trust. That's Peabody buildings. I think these are actually in South Kensington, no? Or, yeah, these are, I think these are close to, actually these are close to where I live in Victoria. So that's the style that you see. I mean, that Francisco is sharing so kindly there. So I mean, those were social housing. There were houses at very cheap rates for people with less resources. So don't be fooled by the idea that the modernist invented everything. No, if we have to talk about a civilization that invented everything before anyone else, we'll be talking about the Chinese or we'll be talking about the Egyptians, but not the modernist. So that would be my conclusion. No, we are now very drive to be told that they did everything, that before 1920 something, everyone was that the buildings didn't exist. No, it was just Le Corbusier came and invented buildings, a thing called buildings as something fashionable from France. No, they existed before. The conditions improved, but not always thanks to the modernism. They improved because society was improving. And then the modernists did a lot of social housing after the war, because a lot of social housing needed to be built after the Second World War, because had been a lot of destruction. Simply as that. I mean, and then obviously they saw the opportunity to rebuild Rotterdam, etc. But that was the main problem. But thank you. So now we have Sohaib. Sorry, Sohaib, that I have put you to the end, but I had to start, and I didn't see you arriving, and we panic a little bit. So with all of you, Sohaib Ahmed, he's from Pakistan, very talented architect, and he has been working a lot in Islamic architecture. He has been, I'm going to say in a very positive way, he has been walking over the shoulders of giants. And when you walk over the shoulders of giants, you get to see towards more distance, even farther than the giants. He have a very good masters in Pakistan, and he's going to talk us a little bit about Islamic architecture and about the work that he does. So welcome to the Salon of Classical Architecture, Sohaib, and the scene is yours. I think you should be able to share your screen at your convenience.
Yeah. First of all, I would like to thank you, Master Pablo, for inviting me for just a beautiful experience, for just sharing my experience with the people at how everything happening with me, and while entering into traditional architecture, while in the realm of the modern architecture. So it's a very important thing to share what one experience about the traditional architecture, because everyone I've seen the boys is over here, the students over here, just like me, who just fighting for something which is really close to them and which is very connected to them, and that is traditions, the culture, the customs, the values, and the principles, which you always keep in the modern time due to the advancement in moving far and far away from the old stuff. So I would like to take a start from the word traditions. Why we always have the phrase the word traditions, and you are just spending a lot of time and telling them the plans and elevations or having all the traditional elements and factors. Moreover, not only those factors, but the concept of the courtyard, the planning around the courtyard, and multiple factors. What could the reasons of these all perspectives? So, what actually a young boy always perceive about tradition is that the tradition is something which is very old, which is the thing of past. It is something which is not related to today, but actually it is something which is always up to date when whatever it is the age of time. Let it be the 15th century, 16th century, 21st century, or going to be 25th. It will remain the same because the principle, the core values, what we say the basic principles remain the same throughout the ages. So that's the thing. And again, Islamic architecture is just a part of the tradition. So what my opinion on that is, I'm just continuing the traditions by practicing in Islamic architecture with my master Kamil Khan Mumtaz and Tamil Khan Mumtaz. So I would like to have a start on something which is very, I won't take that much time because I've seen that the class has already been too long, so it should be good enough to have a very brief, introductions and very brief concepts about the what I think the Islamic architecture is, and what so far I had learned throughout my continuing working in traditional architecture for almost uh, in practical field it's about to be 10 months, but theoretically I've been into Islamic architecture for almost 4 years. So let me start with Bismillah. So let me start from here. So Islamic architecture, continuing the traditions. So basically, the background images you quite be very familiar with that. It is a Muqarnas of Alhambra Hall. So it's all began with the very first question which came to my mind: what is Islamic architecture? So what I have learned so far about the Islamic architecture, it basically the rule of the making everything in a whole and unity. Like it's a very basic concept of presenting the things in a larger perspective. That what is actually the Islamic architecture is. It is a reflection of Tawheed, what we call the Tawheed in our religion. It is something to give the uh, authentication of oneness of God. And why the oneness of God, which is that there is only the one true spirit behind everything. Rather, it's Islamic architecture, and that's a very beautiful part of the tradition art and architecture. Not only in the Islamic architecture, but in Christianity, in Buddhism, in the Hinduism, there's always a central point, the focal point. Just as we have seen the Muqarnas behind this statement, what is Islamic architecture? It is something, while looking at the edges of the screen, you get the boundary. Okay, so there's a central focal point which is over here. You guys are able to see my pointer?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is the central focal point. Like every point is radiating towards the center, and in that center, around that center, there's again multiple centers, which is again have further centers, and all these centers are directed towards the main center, which is the central part of the dome. So it is something which is very, interesting to know that if everything is moving towards the center points, then what is the concept of the multiplicity and the complexity and diversity in the design, like we are having in the background? Because there's a verse from the Holy Quran, wherever you see the face of God. So it is very basic concept when we see that a man always has learned from the nature around him. Whether it's flower, it's a flowing stream, or it's a piece of stone or whatsoever, whether it's a diamond or anything, because it is a regularity of patterns in them, which again direct take them towards the nature, and nature sticks to the divine source, which is the God. So again, the same images of the Alhambra Muqarnas. There you see there's a boundary octagonal. The house octagonal is formed by the it's come from a circle, and we again moving back to the circle, which is the central point of this bridge. So that's again this is a very basic concept of the Islamic architecture. We will, if we see it in further more details, and this is the many what we say from the Ottoman time. It is something which is very manuscripts from the Ottoman time. Zodul Tawarikh. So it was produced in 15th century by Sultan in the reign of the Sultan Muhammad II. So what we see in this image, that there are the concentric circles. The man is in it, and again after that there is a sequence, what we say a sequel division of the circle in 12, which because there's a great connection, of course, of the numbers and Islamic geometry, and not only this Islamic geometry, but the sacred geometry. So that's a very important to know that the concept of the geometry and the division and the proportioning system is always connected to something which is very from the back of the history, which is keep on coming and which is keep on going with our generations in different formats. Like if we see, if it is in the 15th century, so if we talk about the today's century, a courtyard house, it goes in the same concept. There is a central focal, which is a courtyard. It is a microcosm as compared to the big cosmos outside of the house and our in the sky. So this is very generic thing which I keep on learning every day and try to understand what actually these illustrations and things are is giving the meaning to us. So here is one of the verses from the Holy Quran, and he is the one who created the night and the day and the sun and the moon, each floating in its own orbit. I would like to say in the description of this words in this way that, as I told you before, that in traditional architecture, in traditional art, and traditional worldview, there's always a central point around which everything is revolving around them. So that is something that with the very the pictorial representation which is actually existing in the nature. It's not something which is created by the man. So a traditional man has always learned from its nature, its surroundings. So this is the North Star fixed around here. You can get the same image by the long exposure of the camera, and every star is rotating around the center, the North Star. So that's the thing that I would like to share with you. So this is again the Shah Jahan Mosque at Thatta Sindh. This is a dome, which is again a pictorial representation of the sky, which we have seen in the last slide. Again, the concentric circles are moving around a central focal point. And again, these are some plans which I found out during my thesis research at the Dome of the Rock, Al Musairia School, Al Hakim Mosque. But when I was doing my thesis back in 2023, what I realized that how I can really understand about the Islamic architecture, because whenever we listen about the Islamic architecture, the only one thing came to the mind or come into the screen or come to know is that the Islamic architecture is only related to the mosques. They only did the mosque and they are madrasas and they only did the tombs and the baradaris. They didn't do any public buildings. But eventually, I start finding out the things that they did the public buildings. There are, like in Samarkand, Bukhara, the Rajasthan Square. I will again share the picture of it. What do you see in this? There is a geometrical proportioning system in it. Like there's a circle which is get out from a single point, and when you get the 4 points, which is again how you get the 4 points, you have the simple division of the circle. When you get the horizontal and vertical line, which is the north, south, east, west, like there's many things which I really want to share, but I think that it definitely take a lot of time to make me clear to you people, as I think I'm not that much capable of sharing the things in a very direct, in a good way to demonstrate to you people. And I always do a lot of mistakes while telling things, but I will try my best to tell you people in a better way. So again, when you see this, you get an octagonal over here. How do you get it? There's a rotating square here. This is a square. When you rotate the square in a clockwise direction, you get these lines. Okay, you get this octagonal form. So again, the next step goes again for the symmetrical division of that point, where the intersection of the circle of that octagonal is this point, and again you're going to this point. You get the inner walls. You guys are getting my point? So again, on the further divisions and the proportionate, this is a very proportionate and balanced division of a circle or the octagonal form to create the walls and corridors or the exterior wall of the Dome of the Rock. Similarly, over here, they got the area. It's just a geometrical analysis I'm telling you. I'm sorry, I'm just getting the very off-track things to you people. Like there should be a hierarchy to tell you people what actually, how things are really working. But I'm just getting the data and just presenting you people. So that's all. This is, for example, they have the area of this. They divide it in two parts, and when they get the 45 angles of that, they get the proportioning systems of 45 angles. Okay, these lines. From these lines, they get the central points, this point. And again, from this, they have the proportions that they have 4 squares, which is equal to this length. And further on, they divide and get the further points on this scale. And this is a single unit, which is a proportionate to all this diagram. And there's a lot of, basically the geometric analysis is just a depiction. What Kamil once told me when I was just studying one of the masterpiece of the Islamic architecture, and he told me that these geometrical lines are just depictions of the scholars and the masters to understand how actually the real master, the earlier masters that did this while doing this building, while designing this building, while planning this building. So they are not always the true lines. No one knows what actually masters are done, but these are just the ways of understanding the balance and proportions in this all. Similarly, this is again a madrasa mosques. And I would like to share one of the very beautiful points, the concept of the courtyard. So as the Pablo was showing one of the plan of a house where he's telling that there is a courtyard and there's a corridors, the elongated corridors of Victoria Palace and everything like that. So this is very important to understand that everything in the world, if it is if it just around a major thing, and similarly our architecture again go in this direction too. Like if we have the plan in the center, which is a courtyard, there's again there's a very basic thing. There's a rooms on the other end of on the sides of that square. Again, similarly over here. And this is again the very basic concept of the formation in Islamic architecture. The square, which represent the earth, and the octagonal part of of any Islamic architecture building, it just show the what we say the transformation between the space to the circular part, which is again move to this. This is the plan view of that, as we have seen in the Dome of the Rock. So we have the square bottom, the octagonal drum, which is a neck, and we have the drum at the top. Sorry, the dome at the top. Again, this is a geometrical analysis one I was drawing. Central Asian. This is Samarkand, Bukhara, Rajasthan Square. You can clearly see the symmetry and balance over here and how they created it. And this is basically the Iman, the entrances. In Islamic architecture, when you are going to enter into any building, you have the entrance Iman. Iman is basically an Persian word, and it is symbolized as a transformation from one world, or what we say, a gateway from one world to another world. So that's why we always have the Iman entrances, the rectangular part. It's almost a square if you see it. It's a square. When we have the divisions, it's 1:2, 2:1 proportionate. If you see it. Further, it has three divisions inside it. It has the octagonal part inside it. And this is again the plan of the Bashai Mosque. And this is one of the picture from my master's work, Ustad Kamil Khan Mumtaz residency in Lahore. So what we see in this picture, this is a courtyard, so-called the courtyard, but the covered courtyard of the house, on which there is a roof, which is a ribbed domes. Basically, these are the ribbed domes, and these are the mukarnas. Mukarnas and ribbed domes are again the architectural elements of the Islamic architecture. I think my AirPods are getting battery low. Just give me 2 minutes. I'm getting back to you people. I'm so sorry.
That's okay, don't worry. I mean, it's quite an amazing presentation. I'm really amazed of all this that you are showing.
Yeah, but this is the way I'm just presenting is the worst way. I think so.
Recording in progress.
So you guys are hearing me? So you guys are hearing me?
Yes, but you need to unmute yourself in one of them.
So I came back. I just got logged in from my phone now. So
Okay.
what I was showing you, these are the rib domes. The rib domes are basically the what we say it. I'm just getting the echo from my phone.
I think that the problem is that you need to unmute either your phone or your
Yeah, I have.
no, now you are mute. You need to unmute the other one.
So I'm back now.
Perfect.
I'm really sorry for this problems. Anyhow, So basically, the rib domes are just the structural elements in Islamic architecture, because when we these are the ribs, these are probably more these are the major elements in the Persian architecture. When we see in Iran, Iraq, Samarkand, Bukhara, we see most of the rib domes over there. All because they are mostly invented over there. But I do believe what could be the reason in that the brick structures over there, the bricks are not that too much solid that they could handle the load altogether on themselves. So they create the ribs in the domes to have a better structure to control the the weights of the loads, which is coming on the top of the rooms. And again, the mukarnas, these are one of the beautiful elements. I am not able to explain them, but these are something just we need to say wow. But this is something which is a very what my master once told me, that when what his master told him about the mukarnas, that these are something which is very from the divine source, which present like a prophecy, like it just come and it just just appear in front of you. It is not something which is planned by a person that you have to do like this only. So there are multiple ways to do mukarnas, and there are multiple ways to get the geometry. And now it's my thesis project, the Sanj Savera. Sanj Savera is basically a Punjabi word. As I'm from Punjab, so Lahore, so I decided to do a civic center, more like a culture center, where the people can learn more other than just museums and research centers. It is something, and what my basic core was doing the thesis to understand the geometry in architectural design, not only just the surface designs and ornamentation, but actually to understand how the geometry is used in planning, in proportionating the elevations, in creating the masses, in creating the visual balance in the elevations. So this was a form derivation. Again, what was the here? I just took a square and I just according to my side I have a L sort of shape, so I just kept this one square and I separated these two squares. I took this form, I separate it from this and create a void in between it to create a semi open space in between two main blocks. After that, just this kind of thing, and then I again divide. This is a again the proportionate deviance, the central deviance. I took the centers, I join them, I create the open squares which act like a which is taken from the concept of the Chaharbagh, and again a Persian architectural element. Again, this was a bazaar unit, and this was the main block unit, the admin block, the step down garden, the amphitheater. Again, these are the building blocks, and this is an open courtyard sort of space. Which because what do we believe the courtyard is that kind of space where everybody and everyone interacts without any invitation, and just this is a very direct interaction with the people. This was the final form, which are the masses and proportions which I took out from the analysis while doing. And this and master, I would like to tell you that this unit is it's that sort of proportionate that I can sketch it on the I can sketch the mass layout of it on a brick which is about to be 4.5 inches or 9 inch size brick. Again, so these are the elevations. So I took the basic architectural elements, the square part, the octagonal, and then the domes, because and the avans. It's very a mixture of the sort of the colonial and the Islamic architecture at time, because I have studied from an institute which is again designed by Ram Singh Punjab University, old campus in Lahore. I spent my 5 years of architectural education in that building, and that was that was something like feeding into my blood. That's something I'm like the X-Men. He got something in his blood and got the the nails out of his hand. But when I spent my time in my Punjab university, I just learned a lot from the building. Not only the architecture details and elements, but actually I learned how these elements are made throughout the bricks. That each element, the shades of the windows, the arches, the shamsa, the again an architectural element of the facade of the Sikh architecture. the gumtiyan, what we say it, small minarets. I would like I am having on my on the parapet. Okay, so this was the final elevations I made it. This is the geometric analysis on it. Like I took a square, I defined its opening from here. Like this is the opening. How I get this opening? Like on the proportionate division of that. When I took this square and when I rotate it, I get this form. And again I rotate this in a straight line, I got this main entrance out of it. Okay, so again this is again divisions of the dome. Like I took the five part of the square upper part. So these are two squares. Let me tell you. These are, oh sorry. Shade this. So this is something. I think I should have some better color. Yeah, this could be helpful. Mm. So this was a square, and this was another square. Okay, so I took the five divisions of it because in traditional architecture, the odd division is always, you always have to see not only because of this thing that they are very concerned about the odd number. The odd numbers are again come from the nature. Like if we divide basic things, we have the five divisions. When we go for three divisions, 1, 3, 5, 7, and again the number seven has a great importance in any tradition art, whether it's Islamic, it's Buddhism, is Hindu, Christian, classical Roman. We have the very strong cosmology reason behind the seven number. So again, I got the square again over here. I took the golden arcs over here. This from here to this, from here to this, from here to this. I got the edge lines of my main halls. Again, for this part, I took the square, I got the right, you know what we say, the golden arcs to get these out proportions. This was something which is very immature at that time, but that was something which is totally was mine while doing a lot of mistakes, because this is actually not the right way to get out the proportions. What actually I'm just trying to tell you, it is something which I just practiced, which I have perceived in all 2 to 3 years in my architectural education. And this is my admin block. Again, you can clearly see there is a lot of colonial architectural elements in it, all because I have been very into this colonial buildings from 5 to 5 years, which have been into my blood, and I keep on learning them, and that is something which I cannot neglect because that is something is a part of my life. This is a part of my history. So this is something which I have to honor it in any of the way, whether it's just from the British or whatsoever. But this is something which is in my state. It's mean I have to own it. This is again the geometrical analysis of that. I just did the both work, the geometrical proportions and the development of the elevations simultaneously while doing this, the basic mass, and then taking the basic cuts and taking out them. And this is again the angle of 45, which we have seen in one of the elevation sections in the previous slides. This was a master plan, and here this was the rendered actual for my thesis master plan. Again, this is the main entrance of I work on the exile planning. I work on the axis to create a long visual connections. So nobody can. We have the long vistas and work on the long directions. So this is the main entrance. This is the exhibition hall. This is a sorry. This is the amphitheater. This is the auditorium. Exhibition hall. This is amphitheater. The admin block. The multi-purpose units. And again, this was a bazaar over there. And this is a plan of the main block. I did on the grid. Why did the and the grid was over there was of 9 meter, sorry, 9 feet, which is about to be 3 meter grid. I use 3 meter grid as I have seen many drawings work on the grid, because in traditional practices, the masters has always work on the grid, because the grid is something which get you a very good direction, not only in the terms of the what we say planning. It give a very proportionate deviance to you. It helps. It just act like a, because in we have in Islamic architecture we use four sort of grids. One triangular, hexagonal, and third one is square grid. Because these are the grids, these are the basic grid system which have developed from the basic geometry. And this is the plan of the multi-purpose hall, again on a grid, which create a balanced and proportionate for me. This is the verandas, the corridors outside. Because of the hot climate, I need a semi-covered space to which the direct sunlight cannot penetrate through the rooms. These are the multi-purpose rooms. These are studios. These are toilets for them. These are the side elevations of the main block. I use the Joroka element, the traditional jalis. This was a section over here. This is a pendant domes to transform a square space into a octagonal and then into what we say it, the dome. This was the courtyard of the place. This is a multi-purpose hall elevation. Again, fascinated from I will as always inspired from the Bairam Singh work, the use of the octagonal columns at the exterior side. This is a section where the multi-purpose hall is all not only concerned with the what we say the education, but to the craftsmen, where the different people from different craft can come and work over there. And again, this is the same room, but there is an educational purpose of that. This was a plan of the main hall. And what you see over here, again, the same plan. I got the opening from here, which was the opening of the arch in elevation. From that, again, I got the courtyard over here, around which there's a corridors. I got the auditorium, and the professor, what you were telling, what were you saying us, the exterior seems to be very symmetrical, but inside the function is different. Same thing happened over here. The auditorium, the exhibition hall, the outer facade gives the same symmetrical look when we look from it outside, but the purpose inside the functions are different. So this is the auditorium, and this is the stage, and again, the rest of the service is required for the auditorium. Again, similarly over here, this is the offices, which you can see over here. The plannings are almost same, because the functions and the spaces required for them are almost, because these are the offices and changing rooms and storages. They require the same space. So that's why I didn't need to shift much more walls on the grid. So I have the same wall over here, same here, but the wall is closed because it is a stage. So I just focus in on a simultaneously way on a symmetrical proportions. So this is again a big square, which where I have the circle over here, which I use on the 1/3 of that, and from the octagonal over here, using the basic form to create a basic sitting space. And this is a multi-purpose halls. Sorry, this was the first floor units. Again, the golden cuts to get the form inside of the spaces inside it. So these are the plan of the bazaar units. Like I just created the the shops. The sizes of 12 feet 15, 12 feet by 15 feet. So these are the actual supposed to be like 4 meter by 5 meter sort of what we say it 3 5 yeah 4 by 5 This is a room for a shop. These are shops, different shops, the craftsman shops. I was quite fascinated by the Isfahan Square, the bazaar around it. It was one of the Nakshe Jahan. It is one of the living courtyards in the world. So definitely people look at to it. Again, the courtyard space, Chahar Bagh, the division of fort using the basic geometric. Again, the openings to create the balance and proportions. This was the admin block plan. It was quite fascinating from the colonial planning, because when I was doing my thesis, the very big source for me was only the colonial architecture around me. In front of me there was a Lahore museum, which was again built by designed by Ram Singh. HSN College, Sir Kipling and by Ram Singh work on it. It was quite inspired from the HSN College plan. So that is something which I really want to share with you, that because what actually in traditional architecture or tradition art, a person always learn from his master what actually whatever he is doing, like imperial sort of education that once the master Pablo told us that in when you move towards the south or towards the west, you start getting the imperial sort of education over there, from where the master teach his students, then the student teach further his students, and then it's go to generation. And what we say in Urdu, the Sina Basina, Sina, matlab, like it's mean the chest, from chest to chest, from heart to heart. So that is sort of knowledge which is always very important for us. So this was the entrance of the, and this was a bazaar corridor, intersectional point of the multi-purpose halls, parapet details, which was again inspired from the colonial architecture. This was west elevation with a side elevation. This was a bird views. This was a bazaar unit, main block, the admin block, the landscapes over there, the parking, just a requirement so called for me. But the major spots were these. I just want to make it free from vehicle, so I didn't put the vehicle in front of them. I just put at the back, so they didn't, the mess the canvas of seeing the things. This was again another view of it. So the water bodies in front of it. So I did one of the most project in Lahore, the form derivation from the hash bytes using the 9 squares, and using the, and from that I use the 2 squares and using the 2 stories, and again the proportions of the 2 squares transformation into this mosque. This was a ground floor plan, and it was based on the prayer grid. It is basically like this, that a person who do the prayer need a space of like 2 feet by 4 feet, like 1 meter by 2 meter. So it's mean I use 1 meter by 2 meter grid over here, on which I did the planning on the basis of the Hashbaish. Basically I intersect 2 grids. One is Namazi prayer grid, which is 1 meter by 2 meter, 1 meter in width and 2 meter in height. And then again the grid of the hush by, which is in 9 square grid. I just overlap them and create out my personal grid out of it. This was a section of it. Again, the transformation of square room into octagonal by the pendant domes, and then we have the dome over here. This was the Iman entrance of the mosque. This was the elevation. So this was the Iman entrance of the mosque, which is little bit heighted from the the basic plan. This was a ground floor, first floor. So this was a little bit heighted from the floors. So it could be prominent, it could be centralized, it should be in the focus. So that was a basic thing she did. Against the side elevation. So this was a gateway I designed when I was in college, the entrance gate of Lahore. So when what was the basic concept behind that? I was very fascinated by the Fatehpur Sikri work. If you that is something somewhere in India, the great Meisner's work on it in the traditional architecture of the Mughal era. So these are the chhatris from where you can. Chhatri is again architectural element in Indian architecture, in the Mughal architecture, in the architecture of subcontinent, from where you get the views. So whenever the person climb up to cross the road, he just stand here, sit here, and at the vistas from both sides of the road. Then again, there's a Baradari at the top. Baradari is basically Bara mean 12 entrances. So there are 4 gates, 4 arches on each side. So there's a master mason's drawings with me too, which I got from my office. These uh, Pablo Master, these are the drawings of one of the masters in the Multan and back in like 1970s. One master was restoring the Bahauddin Zikri Shrine in Multan. He was working on it, and what the what we say that collector of that time, the deputy collector, he asked that master, why don't you do something for us, that draw these all the knowledge you have in your head and just draw it for us. He did the manual sketching for us, for the like for us people like us, when there was no one to teach the traditional architecture in that way. So he was a basic Meisner who taught all these proportions, that how you can demonstrate that you need to put an arc over here. There are basically two centers over here. Okay, you when you draw a dome, you have a drum over here. You divide the drum line into 5 equal parts. You took the half and you took the center of it. Okay, so from here you put the first arc, and then the second arc you move from here. And this is the colors Mojpa and colors. Mojpa and colors is these are the traditional names, native names of these elements. And this, the proportion of this part, the upper part, this one, the proportion of this part is 1/4 of this, which will be equal to this part. This is a proportion of this, this element. Again, the proportioning system of the upper part, there is a one full circle and the half circle. You have these elements, the further division of them, and you get the end point, the spiral part, in this way. We do the fourth, and even that, Professor, this a corner, the edge point over here at the bottom, still it also have the proportion of 1/2 of the whole drawing. And again, another dome with the what we say, the lotus flower pattern on it. Again, a column. This is the upper part of column, how they use a grid to design them. And similar things we see in the classical architecture in everywhere around us. And this was the geometrical analysis of one of the most Shah Jahani gauze, was a unit of measurement at the time of the Emperor Shah Jahan. He used a gauze which is equal to 32 inches. One gauze was equal to 32 inches. So again, a plan which was based on that geometrical analysis. Again, the elevation, again, based on same analysis. These were the further details. And these are all drawings of the master masons. What we call the colors. Colors is this part. Khopri, what we call skull. Khopri means skull. And skull is this, the dome. Nali galta. Nali galt. This is this, the drum part. What we call the drum, the nali. And these are the plants. And now, from moving from practical to theoretical side, I would like to share some of our experiments which I had done with my master Taimur Khan Mumtaz while doing all such architectural practices. And we have done one of the Islamic Art Festival in LUMS, Lahore University of Management Sciences. It is basically made out of the cardboard, what we use for the packings of the stuffs. We use it and just for the CNC cutting and make these all proportionate forms and geometrical shapes. And these are the rib domes, which we made from again from the cardboard. We're cutting them. This was the interior view of the pavilion. And that's a very beautiful thing about the traditional architecture. Professor, this was a very beautiful, I would like to share an incident when we made this pavilion. After some time, these two cats came and sit over here on the sporting platforms inside the dome and a pavilion, and we were very happy to see. As soon as the building is made, it started becoming live. So, this was the tensile structure which we made out of threads and sticks. This one. This is the courtyard of the building. And we have the pavilion over here, the tensile structure. Basically, this tensile structure is the 3D depiction of the 2D geometrical pattern. You can see over here. This is a team, our Hastonis, our institute where we work, we will study. And this is the center one, Taimur Khan, my master, second master, the son of Kamil Khan Mumtaz. His apprentice, my senior, Bilal sir. His colleague, Farid Saab, he's a geometrian. He taught geometry in Hastonis. My colleague, my friend, Rashid, our Mesner, Adnan. And further, there are all the team members. There are miniature artists, his were two over here. So once we do the geometrical workshops on the analysis of, or moreover on the cosmology and numbers in different universities, where we used to make the geometrical patterns on the glass, but teaching them at the very basic grid, the triangle grid. They use a triangle grid to make these patterns. Again, the central, we use the centers to intersect with them to create this pattern, and this is a single unit which is repeated in 6 directions to create a pattern over here, and then they painted it to create a more fascinating look of it. We create patterns on the floor using masking tape, and this is again the tensile structure which we teach students, and they made out of it. This is basically a six-pointed star, and it has a central over here which is connected like a diamond shape over here, the rib dome. And now the Islamic Art Festival, fourth International Islamic Art Festival. We were again busy in doing the patrons and everything. The tensile structure, which was 15 feet in dia. This was again some pavilions, how we joined with them, the frictional joints, so they cannot move out of each other. A very distorted dome, all because sometimes the structure get distorted because of again a lot of forces acting on it. But this is very stable structure which was made one of the students of the NFC Multan. This is the institute where I studied over here, master. This was the main hall. The balconies over there, the pavilions, the hexahedron, the again another pavilion. This is again six-pointed star over here, in which we again created a six-pointed star while using the masking tape over here. This is a pavilion. This is basically a 20-pointed star, which is further divided to create a 12-pointed star. And again, another workshop in HSN College, where we teach the students the geometry, the numbers, systems, and everything. The floor pattern we made in front of you. You see, these small children made them with their own help. And I was fortunate to attend the Intabao workshop again, urban morphology and how urbans work at the bigger context. That like you are going to teach us after 1 to 2 weeks, sorry, in next week, how the urban facade really work out in the real. So this is Mr. Fahad, the chairperson of Karwan Art, the main chairperson of the Intabao Qatar. It's one of my course mate, Tasneem. We're making the herbal spiral also over there using the dry masonry. This is Professor Lucian Zainab. She's a vice chairperson, and we were just walking through the, you know, what to say, the palm trees garden towards the sketching points. And again, Taimur Sab giving the uh, geometrical analysis, geometrical studies of the geometrical forms. This was again they built this at this time using the old traditional techniques, using the limestone and clay, and the stalks to make the roofs and everything, using the uh, uh, shade to have a better understanding of protection from the heat. This was our work which we did over there, but this is not mine. This is one of our classmates, Shahid. She studies in Notre Dame University, bachelor's in architecture. This was again the work of another group, residential quarters. This was the other work of our group, which we create the creative residencies quarters. So we used again the very basic concept, the courtyard, the common space between the block units, where everybody, the common space of everyone. Again, the common spaces over here, like I told in the very start of the presentation of Mukarnas, we're told that there's a multiple centers, and they again have the central there. All the centers move towards the common center. So that is very important in traditional architecture. So again, we made that in style over there also. And this was again our group. All. Thank you. Thank you for bearing me up for such a long time.
Well, thank you very much for this very beautiful presentation, Sohaib. It's been very, very interesting, and amazing. I mean, the designs that you have been doing are quite amazing. I actually have to say, I envy you. I always wanted to do something more Eastern, and it's quite amazing what you're showing us. So congratulations for that.
Thank you, sir.
And it's really good and interesting because I was very interested to see how you did when you were doing the approach of the Mukarnas, because it's very interesting, the geometric approach to them. It has some sort of divine spiritual thing. It's a bit like when the Orthodox paint an icon. They do prayers, they follow a process. So it's very interesting to see that there is something else behind, because I think that with Western classical we have the privilege or the advantage that we have a text from antiquity that
Yeah.
explains how to do things. Well, Islamic architecture doesn't. And sometimes because of that, some people think that it is just people putting bricks together until they get a mukarna. And it's not like that. There is
Let me show you, Professor. Sorry, I'm just breaking now into you. I just want to show the mukarnas actually how our office work to make mukarnas. Again, putting bricks on brick to make mukarnas. I got this from your words that they put the bricks on this way, so create a geometrical pattern. Basically, it's a 2D geometrical pattern which is put in different levels to create a harmonical growth towards the end.
correct. It's you're building a dome. It's very interesting. And there has been people in the West that they have linked the tracing of the Mukarnas with the rotation of polygons that Vitruvius explains when talking about how to trace the Roman theater and the Greek theater. So, but that is in the West or in the Levant. We're talking much Eastern, so the tradition must be different. What the Cochard, what a French guy called Michel Cochard, he was claiming that it is a relationship between the rotation of polygons, as described by Vitruvius. That rotation of polygons is probably coming from another source, closer more eastern, closer to Pakistan and to Persia, as you have been saying, which I found really interesting, because it's a bit how the Islamic architecture is a bit like a spine that connects Spain with Indonesia
Yeah,
and China,
exactly.
and it's like a stream that has different rivers that flow into it, and then they all flow together in both directions, or it could be even. And when I do my lecture on Islamic architecture, I put the influences of Islamic architecture as a tube.
Hmm.
So it's something that is very interesting to see how everything takes you to the main line,
Yeah.
which is the big connection between Spain and Indonesia and China. But it's really good as well to see that this is still happening, and there are masters who are alive from whom you
Yeah.
can. That's
Yes.
very good
Thank you.
and very exciting and very thriving to see, and especially knowing as well that there are a lot of people in the Persian Gulf interested into it. I know that Qatar and Bahrain, especially Qatar and Bahrain, a little bit Dubai as well, they are doing a massive effort in promoting their own traditional architecture, especially because
Yes.
the royalty is promoting it, and it's very encouraging to see.
Yes. It's very good for everyone.
It's very good. It's very good because it's a very beautiful tradition, and it has been forgotten. And it has been mostly forgotten because, uh, I mean, what was in the Persian Gulf 50 years ago was a couple of fortresses and a couple of big mansions. And then it's like everything has disappeared, and it's good that they are they are recovering all that back and seeing the good thing of building back that way, which is very important, especially in such extreme weathers. It is very important to look to the land and to the origins and and to what has been always done, which is the bulletproof element. No, it's like when we were seeing at the beginning the Sumerian house, and how little the Sumerian house has changed it until very recently. So it is very encouraging to see that you are that that there are those people and that you are learning from them, taking that knowledge and transmitting that knowledge, because at the end we are custodians of a tradition. We
Yes.
just inherit it, keep it, enrich it, and pass it to the next.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
It's something
Exactly.
that a lot of times in architecture we have forgotten about that. It's not about
And
me. It's about what I am being given and what I am going to give to the others.
yeah. Professor, what actually the major problem which I faced while learning all this Islamic architecture thing when I was before entering into the practical side, before getting closer to Kamil Khan Mumtaz and his team and seeing things were from the very closer perspective, I was very fascinated about the things like this, that there should be domes in the Mukarnas and there should be like arcades and there should be patterns, and I just forget the real meaning behind that, what actually they are for. Are they only for the aesthetics, or are they only for, like just appealing the views and just appealing our eyes at how, just creating a wow factor over there. So when I starting learning the Islamic architecture in a closer way, I just realized this part. This is just a transformation. This is a very transparent veil to unveil something which is behind that, which is a divine source. So I might not be able today to explain everything in a very fine way, but actually I'm just saying that there's a lot of thing happening inside me and just bombarding and just rushing out of me, that this was something which I was perceiving before. This is was something which everyone see, and now when I came closer to it, this is something else. So that's again the beautiful part of the traditional architecture. You see things, and when you get closer to that, the dimension became entirely different what you actually were perceiving from the distance.
That's very insightful, and it's that I would say that even from a modernist perspective, that means that you are a truly architect, that you are feeling what you're doing. So that is very encourageable. That component that you see the things that you feel the architecture before it is done on a primer way. That's a very beautiful thing, and not everyone can do that from a design perspective, because we all can experience architecture, but when you experience architecture before having done it, it's like something that, yeah, it's only something that architects normally do, and that's why we are so verbal and so everything about that. But yeah, thank
Uh,
you so much for coming and for showing us the wonderful work that you are doing.
there was a very beautiful line I would like to share while I was just doing some of the research. Let me see if I can find it out.
Yes,
So this could be the last thing which not the last, but could not be the least. Uh, mm, That might be some misplaced somewhere, but basically the meaning of it was uh, there was the I will tell you the what we say at the summarized meaning of that or conclusion. But what that transcript mean was there came a voice inside from me. I said, "Who is it?" No, it is something like this. I see the God from the eye of my heart. I asked him, "Who are you?" He said, "I am you."
Oh,
And it's probably from the Maulana Rumi. Some of the point I'm not getting it clear, but this was something which I read a couple of months before in a in a book, and I was very fascinated about the word which I told you right now, that the soul inside you is the spirit of Allah. It's a note from Him inside you. That's what I want to say.
that's very beautiful.
Thank you, Professor, for everything, and thank you for bringing me. And thank you
You're
for giving me opportunity to come and just share my opinions and share my experience. What I'm being a young architect, getting into tradition, how it feel like, and how it's like, how the journey is for me, and how it can motivate others to come and pursue our true architecture in the true meaning.
that's
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you very much for coming. I mean, that's basically, I wanted to give the to give you the chance of coming and to show us to this small group, and also because you know that we are publishing this as well, so you will
Yes.
get it published on our channel, and I will send you the recording so that you can do whatever you want with the recording. If you want to publish it, you're free to do it. So thank you very much. And for the rest, we are coming almost to the end, and we're coming to the last section of the salon, in which sometimes it happens, sometimes this section doesn't happen. But I think that today is going to happen. We have someone, one of our colleagues, who wants to bring his project for a critique. Francisco, is that correct? So what we are going to do is,
Yes, that's correct.
because
Thank you.
we all speak Spanish, I think Francisco prefers to have the critique in Spanish. Is that correct?
Yes, please.
we are going to
I'm
switch
sorry.
into we're going to switch into Spanish, and I will be doing short summaries in English. So you can, if you want, you can activate the translator. If not, just take a look at what Francisco is going to show, and I will be doing the summaries after we finish every chunk of a speech. So, Francisco, the screen is yours.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Pablo. Bueno, digamos, quiero un poco contextualizar para empezar. El proyecto es, bueno, es un edificio de apartamentos en la ciudad, o sea, completamente aquí cambiamos a otra cosa, pero bueno, digamos que el edificio quiere hablar y quiere entablar una conversación con toda la eh, tradición clásica, porque yo, digamos, considero que las tradiciones que tiene Latinoamérica es la más, la que se sitúa en la transición, ¿no? Entre la ciudad colonial, muy española, inclusive la época precolombina, y la modernidad de, bueno, toda la vida moderna y entabla una conversación muy buena que es el final del siglo XIX y de repente entonces aquí nace pues el proyecto. El proyecto entonces se basa en el trabajo, voy a compartir pantalla,
Por favor.
de uno de los arquitectos, digamos, precursores de este movimiento en Colombia, que se llama Gastón Lelarge, un francés que llegó a finales del siglo XIX y que trae con él pues toda esta tradición. Aquí estoy compartiendo pantalla. Digamos que es una tradición que es entre historicista, neoclásica, pero finalmente es, como tú muchas veces lo has hablado, Pablo, de la escuela francesa, finalmente, que se baja desde Viñola, ¿no?
Sí.
Y es muy importante porque él se vuelve el padre un poco de todos los arquitectos colombianos ya de ahí para acá, que empiezan en los años 1900, 1910, hasta prácticamente los años 30 a construir este tipo de arquitectura, a veces muy creativamente, a veces más ceñida a las reglas del neoclasicismo, pero él es un poco el quien lo trae, finalmente vive 40 años en Colombia y es que entra esta tradición. Entonces, bueno, un poco el proyecto busca hacer este homenaje a él. Por supuesto, aquí pongo algunos de sus proyectos, son proyectos completamente sí, neoclásicos, pero bueno, neoclasicismo francés, inclusive dicen que él era aprendiz de Garnier, que es el de la ópera
Muy
de
francés,
Garnier.
es muy
Entonces,
francés lo
por
que...
supuesto, hay mucha alusión a estos edificios. Eh, y bueno, digamos que en Bogotá, en Cartagena, por ejemplo, aquí tenemos este que es un edificio muy importante en Bogotá. Y bueno, esto es un poco como el contexto. Ya digamos, volviendo a la realidad, que es un poco el, el el proyecto que tenemos está ubicado en una zona de Bogotá que es un barrio que podríamos llamar de clase media alta, digamos muy juvenil, con una zona, digamos, nocturna y diurna muy activa, como pueden ver, digamos, calles muy sinuosas que se separan en su momento de lo que era la tradicional grilla española de la conquista. Este es el barrio nuevo un poco de la ciudad jardín de que se forma en su momento. Y aquí empiezan a haber muchas casas de campo, casas ya más urbanas, pero todas, digamos, como en esta separación de ciudad. Y en esto se ubica el proyecto. No, digamos, algo que nos pareció muy interesante del proyecto, del lote, digamos, del predio, es un edificio nuevo para contextualizar. En su momento es que era un predio casi exento por todos sus lados. Es este que está acá, no sé si es mi cursor, si es mi
Sí,
cursor
sí,
ahí. Y pues es un lote que tiene todas las fachadas descubiertas, que genera un axis con esta calle, digamos, frontal, y también hacia los costados también genera bueno, acá lo pongo en pantalla, un axis también tiene estas zonas verdes, pues muy agradables. Y inclusive, que luego ahorita hablamos más, a ver, este axis que genera da contra un claustro y una iglesia que es parte de una universidad más antigua y que
ajá.
está ubicada, digamos, más abajo. Entonces, digamos que eso también en cuanto a visual está subiendo un poco la montaña, entonces un terreno inclinado. Y bueno, digamos que hasta ahí sonaba muy bien el proyecto cuando pasamos a lo que sería, espérame un segundo aquí, no veo bueno, lo que sería el terreno como tal, nos encontramos que es que ahora no puedo pasar que era un terreno, es que, a ver, es que no me deja. Pero bueno, aquí se puede ver un poco eh, que es un terreno eh, completamente irregular. Digamos que eso es lo que, por eso un poco hacía la cuestión, la pregunta anterior, y es que es un terreno muy irregular. O sea, a ver si yo logro ponerlo, es que tengo aquí, pero lo que es el computador un poco.
Es que tú ahora mismo estás en Bogotá, mapas, pero si te vas a Google Maps,
Sí,
probablemente...
tengo también Google Maps. Es como una aplicación, una es de la alcaldía y la otra es, bueno, Google Maps. Y entonces en el de la alcaldía supone que es un poco más claro. Pero entonces no sé, es que necesito dejar de compartir. Bueno, esta es ya se me destrabó un poco el computador. Y el terreno, es que quería compartir como la figura, es este. Entonces, bueno, ahí estás viendo,
Ah, vale, ahora
es un
sí.
terreno súper irregular que tiene, digamos, todos sus frentes libres, pero no tiene, digamos, forma de ningún tipo.
Ajá, sí.
Es un terreno que el colinda, digamos, con sus vecinos solamente por un costado muy corto y
Mm,
todos sus vecinos se van como haciendo como así como hasta un remate hasta donde está ese lote.
sí.
Vamos que hay una normativa que nos aplica en ya urbana, que son 7 pisos, y pues las inclinaciones del terreno.
Ujú.
Digamos que un poco hay para contextualizar, es que me toca cambiar acá, pero esto es en este momento hay una edificación, una casa, vamos, ya tiene su edad, sus años, pues de los 70 80 y pues tiene vista, digamos, sobre toda la calle y sobre la visual que les comentaba hacia el convento y hacia la iglesia antigua. Esta es un poco la vista que es ese eje, digamos, desde allí. Y pues la idea es que se va a demoler completamente. Digamos que ya desde la casa tiene unas vistas. Este es el convento que les comentaba. Y que hoy en día es una universidad. Y esta es la casa. O mejor dicho, lo que sería el terreno. Entonces, bueno, digamos que en ese sentido, eh, hay, digamos, ciertos ejes que ya esto es desde el lote, desde la casa, que digamos que son los que tomé para poder organizar ese lote porque es muy complejo, es muy, digamos, irregular. Y entonces, bueno, fue los ejes, precisamente un poco lo que estabas hablando, los ejes axiales desde de vista, sobre todo de visual, desde la casa. Entonces, este es uno, que es una zona verde, pues muy clara ahí, y el otro es hacia ¿qué? Bueno, este es otro que son unas casas antiguas de conservación de patrimonio que tiene hacia el otro costado.
Ajá.
Y el otro que es digamos que sería el eje, bueno, acá el eje principal, pero esto no se queda quieto. Pero creo que tengo una foto.
Sí, pero sí, 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 esa es la vista que tienes hacia el eje principal.
Ok, bueno. Sí, entonces, eh, y eso digamos que me determina a lo que sería ya el proyecto. Entonces, ahora sí voy a compartir lo que digamos me genera estos ejes. ¿Qué es esto? Entonces, lo que yo hice para organizar ese eje es partir cada fachada, digamos, simétricamente desde cada eje. Entonces, este es el eje principal, es el que da frente a la calle, digamos, abierta. Este es el siguiente eje que es el que da hacia la zona verde. Y
Ujú,
este es el eje que daría hacia la calle, única calle, digamos, que tiene acceso al edificio. Bueno, tiene otra calle atrás, pero es una calle ya para el acceso de parqueaderos.
ujú,
El edificio, digamos, el resultado, digamos que además la idea es que haga, pues que trabaje la arquitectura, es este un poco, no sé si a él lo ves.
ujú,
Entonces, bueno, digamos que soluciona varios temas en cuanto a mm, organizar el terreno, pero además dándole ciertos frentes hacia lo más importante. Entonces, digamos, este que es el frente, bueno, curvé un poquito el lote porque es bien como sharp y como puntiagudo, y lo volví fue redondo. Entonces, digamos que la idea de eso fue para que se pudiera así como acoplar un poco al entorno. Entonces, pues que acá me está dejando moverme, pero no es cero es. Pero un poco, bueno, un poco acá mientras esto carga. Bueno, ya. Entonces, digamos, en cada fachada trabajé digamos, una simetría, pero siguiendo las axialidades. Entonces, en este caso, hay una simetría central. Esta puerta, digamos, es la entrada al edificio. Acá, en realidad, no es este verde, monte verde, sino ahí está la calle. Eso es un poco, digamos, que mientras tanto, pero y contra el otro costado, como el terreno sigue bajando, se genera un semisótano,
ujú,
pero hay un primer piso, digamos, importante, donde se va a ubicar un local, un comercio de primer piso y que tendría la posibilidad de bajar a un segundo piso, pero como sótano de ese comercio. De ahí para arriba son dos habitaciones, es decir, apartamentos, departamentos que los cuatro primeros pisos son tres departamentos por piso y los últimos dos pisos, que es el penthouse, es dos apartamentos por piso. Hay una terraza, digamos, que es para todos los apartamentos aquí arriba. Y lo mismo en este costado, también intenté sacar esa simetría. Vamos, que me da, pues la forma irregular del lote me da esta forma, pero pues lo que hice fue también mantener pues un poco como el tema tener un inicio,
Ujú,
un cuerpo, un desarrollo y un remate, pues bastante marcado. Y esto pues es todavía un borrador, un esbozo, porque pues la idea es igual incorporar algunos elementos más a detalle, digamos, ornamentos, tal vez algunas columnas, sobre todo en esta parte donde están estos balcones bastante grandes. Y por supuesto, en cuanto a cornisas y en cuanto a todo lo que sería estas divisiones, mi idea es que sean, pues sigan los órdenes, ¿no? Que tengan alguno de los órdenes, probablemente el jónico, pero todavía no lo sé. Eh, pero entonces digamos, y bueno, digamos que esto, la diferencia también es que acá pueden haber balaustradas y en cambio estos balcones negritos son en hierro forjado. Digamos que también es una diferencia. Eh, bueno, digamos que ahí eso es como los borradores, pero esta es la fachada que haría sobre la calle, digamos, de entrada, y, y esta la que da sobre el eje axial de la calle,
ujú.
digamos, la visual más importante, la que tendríamos ahorita. Hay que darle como cierta horizontalidad con las cornisas, porque también pensé en algún momento un remate, pero pues no sé si sea ya como demasiado para el edificio algún tipo de, sí, como de remate, cúpula, pero podría ser, tal vez puede ser. Pero bueno, eso es un poco las materialidad, digamos que para permitir estas figuras, porque son bastante complejas, una geometría compleja, la había pensado, bueno, primero esto podría ser estriado, pero también lo había pensado en que fuera un eh, cemento con un mineral que hace piedra. Creo que una vez
Sí,
hablamos de esa, sí, esa piedra como falsa, bueno, un
piedra
poco.
artificial. En España lo llamamos
Sí,
revoco
piedra
monocapa.
artificial.
Yo no sé cómo lo llaman
Ah,
aquí
ok.
en Colombia, pero vamos, el
Sí,
producto es
porque digamos, sí, porque digamos que siempre tenemos la exigencia de que por temas sismoresistentes y de costos, pues el edificio tiene una estructura en concreto, pues en pórticos. Entonces eso está un poco escondida ahí. Pero la fachada, digamos que inclusive para lograr estas curvas, pongo la estructura como parte de la fachada y complemento el resto, digamos, lo que sería el cuerpo en un ladrillo blanco. Digamos que Bogotá se caracteriza mucho por la tradición de alfarera, digamos, del ladrillo. Sin embargo, no quería que fuera un ladrillo rojo que rompiera demasiado con la piedra o la imitación piedra que decimos, pero quería que jugara entonces un poco con ese blanco. Inclusive vi como muchos ejemplos de Guimard en París y bueno, dije, bueno, esto funciona un poco. Entonces fue como un poco esa decisión. Digamos que eso es el proyecto en grandes rasgos y un poco todavía en borrador, todavía falta definir muchas cosas. Los interiores para esta forma tan rara son muy complejos porque dan unas diagonales y de repente te cruzan y todo. Pero bueno, eso ahí también lo he ido trabajando, digamos que también espero que tengan sentido más trabajados, pero bueno, ahí también van los apartamentos funcionando.
claro.
Digamos que no quisiera extenderme demasiado, pero bueno, ese es un poco el trayecto para seguir hacia el interior. Pero sí, estoy,
Voy a hacer un
bueno,
pequeño
hasta
resumen en
ahí,
inglés para para que el resto sepa y luego empezamos la
por,
crítica.
fa-
So
por
basically,
favor.
Cisco is doing a building in Bogota. You have seen the shape of of the plot where he's going to build. It's a bit irregular, quite irregular actually. The way he has decided to show the building is a bit based on the Beaux Arts tradition, which is also very common in Colombia. And we will talk a little bit in due course. Basically, there was a lot of French architects who were sometimes they were well settled professionals, other times they were adventurers who were just going to America and to sell their services. You see them a lot in Argentina as well. It was very popular in Brazil when they went to no, it's Mato Grosso, yeah, that city which is in the middle of the Amazon, etc. So there was a lot of that, and obviously France, especially I mean, France was the cultural center of Europe. So you wanted to learn something, you have to go to France. The École des Beaux-Arts was the best school of architecture in the world. So everyone wanted to have something French. So that's why everyone started to look at France. And at the same time, it was something very interesting for the countries in South America because it was for them Ironically enough, going French was for them the way of reaffirming their nationality because they could find a national style out of the colonial precedents or the viceregal precedents from the Spanish time. They could find something different, and by doing that blend, because at the end of the day it won't be purely French, it will be it will be French and Colombian. That would emerge as a proper Colombian style, especially as Francisco has mentioned. Among other things, you have the earthquake. So you couldn't have the gracious Parisian structure. You need to have things which were look a bit more chunky, a little bit more squat to protect yourself from the earthquakes. And basically, I'm going to start doing a bit of a review, some comments to Francisco's proposal. The building has a concrete frame structure. The ground floor is going to be covered or rendered in a specific in a type of artificial stone. The second to fourth floor are going to be in brick, but not red brick, a special type of brick, and the top is going to be again in this stone render. So I'm going to turn back into Spanish, and then we will do a little bit of a summary in English. And of course, all of you are invited to stop. I think that we only have Sohaib and Airbnb speaking English. The rest of you all speak Spanish, so feel free to jump into Spanish or Portuñol. So it's up to you because I know that some of you speak Portuñol. So vamos al español. Yo lo primero que te diría es, me parece muy bonito lo que has dicho del ladrillo blanco, pero no tiene por qué. El contraste entre la piedra dorada y el ladrillo rojo siempre es muy vivo. Y cuanto más blanca sea la piedra, más blanco sea el render que le vas a poner el revoco, más vivo queda. Ahora, si lo quieres más neutro, más neutro. Es decir, queda a tu criterio. Yo, desde luego, y tú mismo te has respondido, obviamente todo lo que es la planta baja, el zócalo, necesita unas estrías que tú se las vas a poner. Y al final de las estrías, una cornisa. Pues eso se lo vas a poner porque eso ya como estabas diciendo, le vas a poner más ornamento. Lo que yo sí tendría en cuenta es que esto, por lo menos, tiene que tener una base separada. O sea, que esto sea un nivel y luego esto otro, que quede una cosita como escalonada, ¿no? De alguna manera, que no tiene por qué ser muy grande, que tú mismo lo puedes poner con una banda, con una cornisa, puedes cambiarle el entorno. Entonces, yo ponía eso, que te quede una diferenciación porque este sótano te queda, vamos, porque este sótano me has dicho que esto va a ser para el negocio, ¿no? No es un aparcamiento. Pues
Yes.
entonces, ya te digo, ponerle una diferencia para que además, para que todo el edificio asiente sobre algo. Y luego, obviamente, claro, bueno, pues esto de aquí, que tú le mismo has hecho la división por los materiales, se nota sola, pero esta división, y luego, pues le vamos a poner, si le vas a poner las estrías, tienes que tener en cuenta que, claro, que estas estrías tienen que tener una cosa tal que así, cuando las esté, ¿sabes? Que estas estrías tienen que seguir un patrón como si fuesen de piedra. Eso es imprescindible que lo haga. Y por supuesto, abajo tienen que tener esto. Tiene que tener un arco adintelado. O sea, tienes que tener mucho cuidado que las estrías realmente parezca. No es que sea una imitación de piedra, pues que hagan una buena imitación de la piedra. Y esa estría puede ser algo simplemente tal que así, ¿sabes? No tienes por qué ponerlo. Ponerle un gran esfuerzo. Hay veces que las estrías a veces pueden ser un poquito así, ya mucho más elaboradas. Pero claro, a ver, que esto después es muy fácil, que esto es un molde que tú le vas pasando, ¿sabes? Que los ves, que las hay también que son así, ¿sabes? Esto al final es el revoco, como tú esto lo vas a aplicar, no es un aplacado que pones, sino que es una capa de mortero, ¿no? Porque es lo que vas a hacer. Esto no son piezas, ¿no? Esto es un mortero que tú aplicas en el muro, ¿correcto? Perfecto, pues entonces eso tendrá el fabricante que tú utilices, tendrá ya sus propios moldes y tú utilizas pues el que más te guste, la estría que más te guste, eso ellos te la hacen y quedará estupenda, ¿sabes? Que eso. Ahora, vamos a cambiar de color.
Sí, digamos, ahí te iba a decir un paréntesis, digamos, el fabricante con él estamos mirando cómo hacerlo porque también me ha propuesto hacer como como unas piezas que se fue, pero siento que es mucho más trabajoso que simplemente tener una superficie que vas marcando, ¿no? Como lo que dices.
Porque si tú esto lo haces, si tú haces todo lo que es las primeras dos plantas en ladrillo o en bloque de hormigón o en bloque de cemento, no sé qué es lo que será más típico en Bogotá, porque muchas veces la industria prefiere hacer bloques de hormigón, aunque luego lo ponga de ladrillo, ¿sabes? Porque al final
Sí,
internamente
de acuerdo.
el,
Sí,
el-
acá por lo que es el tema del alfarero es bloque en ladrillo, tienes razón. Es el que
entonces
es.
la idea es que tú tengas tus bloques en ladrillo, ¿no? Tú tendrías, digamos que es en la fachada curva en planta, ¿no? Tú con tus ladrillos así, como tengan que ser, y luego encima le aplicas un revoco. Ahora, si tú lo vas a hacer con pieza y hay problemas sísmicos, mi temor es que lo que tú esto se pega. Esto se adhiere y esto tiene que tener pues, 1 centímetro, 2 centímetros máximo. ¿Sabes? Porque para que no se te caiga mucho el render, creo que son como mucho 2 centímetros, que es nada. Entonces, claro, de esos 2 centímetros, pues tiene como una canaladura de 1,5 o algo así. Entonces, eso es más o menos la dimensión que tiene. Ahora, si tú esto lo vas a hacer en piezas, la cosa cambia. Porque tú lo que vas a tener, tú tienes aquí tu pieza, tienes aquí tu muro, y ahora de alguna manera tienes que instalarle unas pletinas en las que se te va a insertar todo esto. Es decir, esto es mucho más complicado que esto. Y si vas a hacer esto, ya te vas a piedra natural.
Sí, de
Pero
acuerdo.
claro, pero que creo que este sistema es mucho más práctico que este.
Sí, de acuerdo, totalmente.
A ver, esto es ya el de esto. Ya también, ya te digo, habla con el fabricante porque al final el fabricante es el que sabe, es el que conoce su producto y es
Sí,
el que te va a decir. Es decir, esto a la vez también un aplacado te puede, versus un enfoscado, el aplacado te puede dar más flexibilidad. Eso también
ok.
puede ser, que sabe que no sé, que ya te digo, que hay muchas opciones.
Claro,
Y
pues él me decía como que esta opción, la primera, digamos, era más fácil y económica, pero podía tener un resultado menos pulido, digámoslo así. Pero bueno, no sé, ¿si era? No debería, ¿no?
bueno, es que si tiene razón, porque esta pieza está hecha en taller y
Claro, exacto,
es
por eso
perfecta para tú ponerla. La otra la
la
pones en
pone.
obra, con lo cual básicamente vas a tener que estar allí todos los días con el látigo diciéndole al albañil, oye, esto lo haces bien. Pero bueno, también para eso somos arquitectos.
Exactamente.
Claro,
Sí, exactamente
pero
eso
ya te digo,
me
pero
dijo.
para el enfoscado, tú coges, les pides que te hagan una muestra, y si no te gusta, pues ya sabes que te tiene que ir al aplacado. Pero yo creo que el aplacado te va a salir mucho más caro. Y ya te digo, si te vas a ir
Sí, sí,
aplacado,
sí.
mira piedra natural, porque total, ya que te perdió a río, como decíamos en español.
Sí, no, y creo que por costos no es tan fácil.
Claro.
Nos vamos
Entonces hay que,
más
mi- hay que, hay que mirar el coste económico y luego también si tú ves que no van a conseguir el mejor efecto, pues habrá que ir al render o al enfoscado que te dé el resultado menos feo. ¿Sabes?
claro.
Por lo cual, a lo mejor en vez de
Sí,
irte a
como
un
más
blanco,
pulido.
claro, hay que irse a un gris, hay que irse a algo que te cambie un poco o aumentar la granulometría del enfoscado,
Claro.
etcétera. Claro, ya eso lo vas viendo. Aquí,
Sí, de acuerdo, hay que tenerle mucho ojo ahí. Vale, ahí sí. Sí, ahí pensaba como una de estas, como abombados, tal vez, como que vayas como recogiendo todo ese voladizo. Lo que pasa es que la norma permite voladizo solo en esa fachada, por eso. da esa geometría un poco
Vale,
rara.
vale, no, pues en esta fachada tú le puedes poner una cosita tal que así, o también en el peor de los escenarios, si no hay dinero, etcétera, etcétera, bueno, pues se le puede hacer unos refuerzos de hierro.
Ok.
Obviamente esto tiene que ser muy
No,
grande.
porque sí. Ah, pero creo que lo. Ah, no, ahí está. Sí, pero no, digamos que mi idea es que también sea en cemento,
Ay,
tal vez una.
mejor, mejor,
Y que
mejor.
sea como en. Que siga la misma.
La misma,
Sí,
claro,
como la. O sea, la misma materialidad, sí.
a mí se me viene mucho a la cabeza el flat iron.
Ok,
Cuando obviamente el flat iron es 30 veces más grande, pero creo que es una buena referencia.
claro.
Luego, una cosa con la que te vas a encontrar, pero claro, ahora tenemos aquí las regulaciones, etcétera, etcétera, es que con las balaustradas, tú sabes que la distancia entre raíles en un balcón es 10 centímetros. Cuando tú empieces a poner las balaustradas, te vas a encontrar un problemón. ¿Por qué? Porque la balaustrada tiene una forma tal que así, ¿no? Aquí empieza, aquí termina, y te va a hacer una cosita tal que así,
Mm,
¿no? Y ahora, y la siguiente, pues se repite y tal que así. Ahora, los famosos 10 centímetros son aquí, no aquí. Con
ya.
lo cual te van a quedar
Ok.
muy, 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 muy pegaditas. Y te van a quedar, y te pueden
Sí.
quedar muy feas. Así que a lo mejor te compensa más desde un principio plantear
Mm,
rejería en ambas. Pero
ok.
tú puedes coger y decir, venga, en estas dos, la rejería va. Por ejemplo, incluso puedes decir, puedes incluso aprovechar esta parte que estás haciendo aquí y decir, venga, en planta baja, planta primera, en planta segunda, lo que tengo es un parapeto de hormigón. En planta tercera y cuarta, lo que tengo, ¿no? La segunda, baja, primera, segunda, tercera, cuarta, quinta, sexta, claro, que son siete, que si consideramos el primero el uno. Bueno, total. En estas dos, una rejería más simple y que va aumentando de complejidad. Claro, ¿por qué? Porque el de la penthouse paga más para tener un
Sí.
mejor elemento. Entonces, claro, pues estas dos personas que van a tener además sus columnitas, etcétera, que además van a quedar súper bien con la curva tan dramática que tiene el cacharro este, pues le pones una rejería mucho más elaborada. Ahora, eso
Ok,
sí,
ok.
le vas a
Ajá.
poner unas columnas. Ten en cuenta que tú vas a tener tu fachada así curva. La manera de ponerlo es tú vas a tener las columnas. Imagínate que tienes las columnas aquí y luego la reja va detrás de las columnas. No pongas la reja entre las columnas.
Ah, ok. Mm.
Ah, te va a quedar una
Y
cosa.
debería ser un pedestal, tal vez, o sea, como
Ah, hombre,
para precisamente.
puedes ponerle un pedestal también. Ya te digo, ya dependiendo de la altura del módulo que le quieras poner a la columna, te va a quedar una cosa u otra. ¿Sabes? Si le pones un
Ok.
pedestal alrededor, pues ya automáticamente está justificando estas dos bandas, con lo cual es perfecto. Y luego, claro, por
Sí.
supuesto, también los ladrillos tienen que ponerse en dintel. Si por lo que sea te va a salir
Mm,
muy difícil poner los ladrillos así, que te pueden venir con problemas, por lo menos, por
mm.
lo menos, por lo menos, encima de la ventana ponerlos en vertical.
Claro, sí, porque digamos en el edificio anterior que nosotros hicimos fue un lío, o sea, mi idea era ponerlos así, digamos, en clave,
Dintel, sí.
creo que se llama, bueno, pero los mamposteros, que son los que ponen los ladrillos, decían no, o sea, fue una pelea porque decían que era muy complejo sacar esa esquina, por lo que es un enchape, finalmente como es una estructura en concreto, ese ladrillo es en enchape. Y fue muy complejo, sobre todo porque además el mismo ladrillo pues no se presta, como es rectangular, cuando lo pones así, de repente la parte de abajo también o la cortas
Es que
o
hay
te
que
quedan como,
claro, es
pues,
que hay que
sí,
cortarlo, hay que
y
cortarlo.
arriba.
Es el problema. Pero si se te pone el albañil puñetero, por lo menos los verticales.
Sí, eso
Que
sí
yo lo
es
entiendo
más
porque
fácil,
luego a pie de
claro.
obra los albañiles siempre van a la ley del mínimo esfuerzo y es una pelea constante. Pero si
Sí,
tienes...
o te quieren cobrar cada cosita como, bueno, esto, entonces te cobro extra adicional, adicional.
Y sí, no, esa es otra, que a mí me hace mucha gracia cuando se pone todo en los precios y dice, ah, no, que de hecho, vamos, el otro día vamos, que pasan algunas compañías, ¿no? Que te viene un fabricante y te dice, no, pero es que a mí, yo para hacerte esto, que te hago unas rejerías maravillosas, le tienes que decir a tu contratista que me tiene que utilizar a mí. Porque muchas veces el contratista llega y dice, rejería, no sé cuánto dinero. Y ahora llega tú y
Claro,
dices, no, pero es que, oiga, es que la rejería es una rejería elaborada, no son un montón de barras verticales. Y te va a llegar el
exacto.
contratista y te va a decir, ah, no, es que, oiga, yo le echo el precio para barras verticales. Y dices tú, bueno, pero entonces,
Sí,
¿para qué te doy los planos? Pero que hay que tener mucho ojo con eso. Entonces, igual a
sí,
lo mejor lo
sí,
que pones en el pliego del proyecto, en la memoria, decirle,
sí.
oiga, es que usted me tiene que hacer un arco a clave, un arco adintelado.
Sí,
Para que,
vamos a ver, pero al
para que,
menos sí que queden verticales. ¿Y
claro,
crees que bajo las rejerías de estos balcones, los de la esquina
sí.
curva, deberían haber, por ejemplo, modillones, esto, o solo los ladrillos?
Hombre, vamos a ver el detallito del balcón. El balcón, tú vas a tener tu muro de ladrillo
Ujú,
y el
ujú,
balcón te va a proyectar. Yo supongo el balcón además va a proyectar una distancia X, vamos a llamarla, ¿no? Pero no será
ujú.
mucho por temas de sismo. Entonces,
Sí, por
el,
norma.
bal- el balcón en sí, la proyección del balcón, esta es en concreto, ¿no?
Mm,
Esto es un balcón de concreto. Entonces,
mm,
claro, tú eso, ahí te va a venir una cosa interesante en tema de detalle. ¿Por qué? Porque de repente vas a tener, donde tengas un balcón, vas a tener una línea que va a haber que enfocar en este mismo color. Lo
ujú,
cual pues, te va a dar una nota
sí,
de color. Es lo único que voy a decir. Entonces, ¿cómo podemos solucionar eso? Una manera, pues le ponemos lo que tú dices, un modillón. Pero claro, ten en cuenta que estos son los apartamentos, digámosle, pues de malo, los menos afortunados. Entonces,
sí,
otra manera que tú tienes de hacerlo es que tú digas, venga, pues tengo esto aquí y lo que haces es, si esto no proyecta mucho, puedes tener un par de ladrillitos o tres creándote el de esto, de manera que cuando lo miremos en alzado, lo que a ti te va a quedar va a ser una cosa tal que así. Con esto siendo un ladrillo, luego dos y luego tres, por ejemplo. ¿Sabes? Lo que yo digo es un poquito aquí en perspectiva. Tienes tres ladrillos,
ujú,
luego tenemos dos y luego tenemos uno. Eso puede ser una opción, ¿sabes? Que te quede y te queda una cosita. También ya te digo, habiendo, como tú me dices, una gran tradición de productos cerámicos, probablemente haya unos modillones cerámicos preciosos para insertar en el ladrillo. Entonces, eso
que
sería lo
puede
siguiente.
ser.
Busca lo que
Ujú,
hay, que es lo que hay en el mercado, porque si es buena tradición cerámica, te vas a encontrar cosas muy, muy interesantes en ladrillo o en terracota.
sí,
Entonces,
de acuerdo. Sí. Tristemente, como porque se dejan de usar, ya van desapareciendo. Inclusive en el último proyecto habían unas molduras, digamos, unas pequeñas cornisas y de repente, justo el año anterior, la
o-
ladrillera las había dejado de fabricar porque nadie las compraba y todo era, pues todos son cubos. Entonces, bueno, pero seguro se encuentran en algún lado.
claro, entonces si encuentras algo, pues adelante, pues utilízalo. Si no, pues con el propio ladrillo creas una especie de voladizo y también sobre todo ten en cuenta porque al final, cuando tú evalúas el coste, ¿no? Digamos que estos son los más económicos y estos son los
Claro,
más caros. Entonces, claro, aquí pues
sí,
unos millones de piedra, no sé qué, y en referencia imitando los que pueda haber aquí abajo, mientras que esto pues algo un poquito más sencillo y más discreto.
sí, 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 de acuerdo. Mm,
Y luego lo que tú decías del remate, el remate puede
mm,
ser algo tan sencillo como que de repente la cornisa aumenta un poquito aquí de altura y luego baja. Y luego aquí si quieres pues le pones un pequeño medallón pues con algo o con nada, ¿no? Un medallón vacío y ya está. Decir que
mm,
no tienes por qué ponerle una crestería barroca, ni una cúpula, ni un... ni,
Ay,
ni nada. Puede ser algo tan sencillo como tenemos la curva que hace así, ¿no? Y ahora encima, pues le ponemos algo que haga, y imagínate que haga una cosita así, y ahora hace así, ¿sabes? Y lo estoy dibujando en perspectiva, pero creo que me coge la idea de decir que sea una cosa tal que así. Luego le pones el óculo, algo así, y ya está. Y no tienes por qué. Y si lo quieres, y a lo mejor pues te queda una cosita así. Yo qué sé. Un perfilito sencillo. Ahora, una cúpula. Yo te diría que si eres capaz de crear un espacio capaz de tener una cúpula aquí, pues obviamente es un elemento que estás vendiendo al cliente, al promotor, etcétera. Yo solo pondría una cúpula si aquí en esta esquina, dentro de lo que sea la habitación interior de este departamento, puedes poner una cúpula. Entonces sí. ¿Por qué? Porque es que entonces, obviamente, claro, el señor o la señora que vive en la penthouse, pues va a estar viendo las vistas de Bogotá con su cúpula.
claro, de acuerdo.
Pero
Sí,
una cúpula
se me
meramente
complica
decorativa,
el tema de que tiene que ser como un techo, ¿no? Como que ese último piso se me vuelve como todo un tejado, ¿verdad? Como...
sí. Pero que ya te digo que con poner a lo mejor una pequeña cornisita aquí, un pequeño remate,
Claro,
con eso.
también podría.
Porque además le has dado, el edificio es muy dinámico, tiene su potencia, ¿no? Porque al final le estás dando el dramatismo pues a través de encajetar la curvatura. Porque además otro problema, vamos, que yo no sé si va a ser problema o no, que no creo que nadie te diga nada, porque los balcones es algo que se nos vendió como la gran panacea del movimiento moderno, y luego al final todo el mundo hemos ido quitando los balcones de las casas porque lo que se necesita es espacio. Entonces no creo que te vaya a venir
Mm,
nadie pidiéndote balconada.
ok, ok. Sí, bueno, y también otra cosa que pensé precisamente en tema de balcón fue ese último balcón, digamos, el último piso. ¿Qué pasa si lo abría? O sea, en vez de cerrar el edificio ahí, ¿qué pasa si lo cortaba hacia adentro? Como haciéndole o sea, como un poco otro remate hacia, o sea, en vez de volverlo más hacia afuera, más hacia adentro.
Es decir,
Una opción, porque
que la
sí,
planta
como
puede
que,
ser así,
ujú,
y a este nivel
ujú.
sea así. ¿Esto es lo que me estás diciendo? Que
No,
haya,
o sea, esa también lo pensé, pero yo decía, esa, por ejemplo, esa curva, en vez de estar convexa, no, sí, cóncava fuera convexa, o lo contrario,
es decir, que la curva,
como que generara, como que mejor dicho, esa terraza que hay en el último piso quedará descubierta.
que digamos tenemos esto así, y ahora tu terraza aquí sea, digámosle, redonda. Por decirlo.
Exacto, como hacia, algo así.
Y luego, pues claro, el resto de los muros, pues no sé, yo creo que lo vas a tener complicado para ponerla así, ¿eh? Pero bueno, si lo puedes
Es
conseguir.
cierto, se desenreda un poco, es verdad.
Queda muy bonita
Que
la idea,
además
pero,
tengo...
pero no sé si la forma del solar te da para ponerla. Si lo tienes para ponerlo, es algo para vender. Y tú ten en cuenta luego que tú esto le pones tus columnitas, tus cuatro
Exacto, algo
columnitas,
así.
y eso, pues obviamente, habrá. Y obviamente, claro, todo esto es el gran salón, ¿no? Con tus ventanas aquí, tus ventanas. Obviamente, claro, es que esto no es como yo lo he dibujado, pero bueno, si lo puedes poner así, obviamente sí. Entonces, claro, entonces arriba sí tienes tu cúpula.
Claro. Porque hay otro tema y es que esa terraza, digamos, de arriba es como una terraza comunal para todo el edificio, es para todos los
Claro,
residentes,
si le pones
pero
la
allí tengo
cúpula,
un remate de un ascensor que es este,
sí.
que también no lo tengo tan resuelto, siento que se ve como el niño que está ahí como, como una cabecita,
Esto lo
pues
soluciona.
no sé.
Además, después es un elemento que. Esto, la manera de solucionarlo es como si esto fuese de repente, pues tienes aquí un pedestal insertado ahí, y ya está. Y es un pedestal, tampoco se le decora mucho, con un su parapetito
Pues,
arriba, y ya está. Y que esto, el castillete, que es como lo llamamos, lo que te va a quedar va a ser una cosa tal que así, y todo esto es el piso de tu terraza, tú vas a tener aquí tu puerta que te lleva a lo que es la terraza en sí, y luego, bueno, pues esto va a tener una base, esto va a tener como un pequeño recerco,
Como un pequeño kiosquillo, ¿no? Como
un
kiosco.
pequeño kiosco, y luego pues su cornisa.
Ujú.
Y luego encima de la cornisa, pues por si hace falta, porque a lo mejor te hace falta, le pones un pequeño rematillo así, ¿sabes? De manera que tú tienes aquí tu cornisa, el muro continúa aquí y esto se le pone pues una pendiente pequeñita, pues para que el agua evacúe, no se te quede acumulada ahí y luego el resto es cubierta plana.
Ok. Bueno, súper. No, pues creo que está súper, súper claro.
Ha levantado la
No es
mano,
que,
perdona, quería decir algo.
bueno, sí.
Sí, perdón, no podía quitar el silenciar. Yo tenía solo dos comentarios, pero obviamente son en función de que no te vayan a complicar todo tu distribución de interiores. Si dijiste tú que esa curva tú la hiciste para darle una forma al edificio, no sé, yo trataría de que si ya estoy yo haciendo la curva, entonces que mi fachada principal tenga simetría bilateral. Ese sería un primer comentario. Y un segundo comentario es que ese tipo como de bay window o voladizo que tienes del lado derecho, no sé si lo pudieras tener también del lado izquierdo para, de nuevo, para que se vea simétrico el edificio. Esos serían mis dos comentarios solamente. Y obviamente es en función de que no te complique todo adentro la distribución.
Ok, bueno, digamos que hay un tema de que si tú te preguntas cuál es la fachada principal, digamos que hay muchas fachadas, porque digamos, esta es la entrada, esta es la que da contra el eje axial y esta da contra unos jardines que hay al frente del edificio y esta son en la curva. Pero también lo que sí dices que también fue bastante complejo, digamos, de lograr el tema de la simetría o digamos de la sensación de, ¿cómo se diría? Como de, sí, como de composición que no se sintiera desbalanceada, fue porque es en este costado, que es el lado derecho, la norma urbana, por alguna razón, permite tener ese volado, ese voladizo, como ese risaliz ahí que sale un poco, y por el resto de las otras fachadas no lo permite, o sea, tiene que ser una fachada plana o lisa, digamos.
Ya,
Entonces, pues, digamos, claro, uno diría, oh, entonces me voy por toda la fachada plana, pero entonces ahí viene el tema inmobiliario, el tema de que pues se necesita pues ocupar todo lo posible del predio que se pueda, entonces, digamos que ahí hay como esos dos como fuerzas o como factores que me obligan un poco como a plantear. Sin embargo, por ejemplo, lo que dices de la arsimetría, esta que es la fachada, digamos, de ingreso al edificio, intenté mantener una simetría en tener un cuerpo, digamos, principal más importante y dos cuerpos laterales. Eh, y bueno, digamos que en esta que es la del eje, sí no es tan lograble esa simetría por pues la figura del lote y lo que te cuento de la, sí, de ese voladizo que permiten. Entonces está un poco así como irregular.
sí, ok, muy bien.
Es por eso. Pero bueno, si se puede arreglar de alguna forma, se les ocurre. Nada,
Yo estoy deseando de ver más del edificio, o Francisco, estoy, porque es muy interesante, ¿eh? Porque creo que es un caso clásico de que a nosotros los arquitectos nos encanta, ¿no? Porque no es excesivamente grande, con lo cual puedes controlar bien todos los detalles, no es excesivamente complicado, vamos, pero tiene un nivel de complicación lo suficientemente interesante como para que sea un reto, ¿no? Porque no es un lote rectangular que, bueno, venga, hacemos lo que sea y ya está. No, aquí tienes que quebrarte la cabeza, ¿no?
la cabeza.
Un proyecto muy
Así,
interesante.
así. Bueno, no, muchas gracias, Pablo. Espero que cuando ya vaya elaborando más y tal vez los interiores, pues lo podamos volver a revisar.
Y
Sí,
claro,
sí, está bien.
ya te digo,
Bueno, muchas
en
gracias.
2 semanas tenemos la próxima sesión, pero de entre medio, si me escribes por privado, podemos hablar.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias, Pablo. Y de verdad muy útil todo lo que me diste. Lo voy a aplicar. Claro que sí.
Vamos, yo estoy seguro que muchas de las ideas ya las tenías tú en la cabeza.
Algunas, no todas. Me da mucha claridad igual. Eso sí.
Pero bueno, oye, pues muchas gracias también por traer el proyecto. Y lo que voy a hacer ahora para terminar, donde la he puesto, ya la he cerrado, vale. Voy a volver a poner un poquito de la presentación por hacer un poco el cerrado general de la sesión y pues contaros un poco cosas que hay que están ocurriendo ahora. I'm going to switch back to English, not only for you, out of respect also for our guest that has been here like a hero till the end, RB, and also for all the listeners on the YouTube channel. So I'm going to do another reminder of the summer schools with some news. So I'm not going to show the usual ones. Of course, this is the usual one, the Beauty and Ugly Architecture in Oslo. So please come. I will be there together with more people, and it will be quite an incredible event. We're organizing it as a sort of a leisure party, not only a learning event. Different summer schools that I'm talking about this year. There is one in Romania. The summer school in Romania is, if any of you wants to visit the beautiful country of Romania and the Carpathians, go there, and especially if you like hands-on work. So the school in Romania, in the Scuola della Bunesti, they also received the Philippe Rotier Prize last October, and they do a lot of hands-on work. So if you want to get fit during the summer and do some work in the summer school in Romania, go there. Then you have the apply on Dinbo Romania or through the traditional architectural group, and you will get a wonderful experience with two wonderful architects who are organizing it, and it's very highly recommended. Another highly recommended one, an introduction to carpentry in Everbrak in Belgium by Dirk Mortier, an amazing carpenter, traditional carpenter from Belgium. It's organized by La Table Ronde. And if you happen to be in Europe, I think that most of the ones that are here, we have some from UK, some from Spain, but the workshop with Dirk Mortier is very interesting to learn traditional timber techniques, which I would say that opposed to stone or to other techniques, or of course brick or concrete, I think that timber is something that is relatively easy to revert back to traditional techniques because timber is a very basic material and hasn't changed much since the Paleolithic. So it's very easy to go back to traditional techniques. Doesn't have to be industrialized at all. And I think that most of the things that you do in timber they end up being bespoke made. So it's something to go for. If timber is not your work, there is another one. I'm not going to with Du Jardin Art Concept in Belgium. It's about ironworks. Again, very interesting. If your realm is iron, creating iron tools, iron stuff, you want to know more about iron, you want to open your own foundry, go and learn with this gentleman who is also an amazing person. You will be with Nadia and Noah as well from La Table Ronde, so you will enjoy a lot. So this is especially for people who love hands-on work. It's highly recommendable to go to anything that Tableau organizes. It's highly recommendable for hands-on work. And of course, you're still on time. Today is the last day to apply for the Bruges Summer School, but please apply later if you have the time. It's from the 1st to the 15th of August. It will be great. All the summer schools are great. I will be there teaching as well. So if you want to get a bit more of, if you didn't get tired of me by then, you will get tired of me there. So, but you will learn traditional timber techniques through the ages. So we will be learning medieval, neoclassical, and romantic dash early modern uh, timber technique. So it's going to be very, very interesting this year. And after that, they will go to the beautiful city of Conques in France to do a summer school in vernacular architecture. So, and also this year with a special hint on Romanesque. So it will be very beautiful summer school in that beautiful pilgrimage city of Conques. There is another drawing competition, so I encourage everyone to participate again. I know that some of you have already participated, but please do again. There is another drawing competition about the traditional house. So please do your design and present it. It will be exhibited in Belgium and on internet, and it will be very good for you to get exposure through La Table Ronde. So please do check the deadlines, check the conditions, because sometimes they allow computer, other times they don't allow computer. So check the specifics for this one. And as I always say, much more, check your local chapter, subscribe to INBAL or subscribe to ourselves, the Classic Planning Institute, for more information. And just to let you know, we have opened our or the applications for the GR1 certificate. They're open if you want to know more about classical architecture. This will be your place. I mean, these are just general tertulias, general gatherings to give you some resources if you want to know in depth how to design based on classical principles. Please inquire us at the Classic Planning Institute. There will be an exhibition very soon, and we will invite all of you. We will be sending invitations, and you can see in the background some draft work for some by some of our students. So it's going to be very, very interesting, and it's quite exciting what all of them are achieving this year. What they have learned with us at the Classic Planning Institute. So this is what you can learn as well with us. And last but not least, our next salon, I think that the day is having a bit um, uh, flying around. So it's going to be on the 20 something of March, because today is the 15th of March. No, what day is today? Either the 15th, 15th, and yeah, the 30th, the 30th of March. And we will be doing elevations and project critique as usual. So thank you very much to all of you for having been here. I hope that you have enjoyed. I hope that you have enjoyed the references, the critique. I hope you have enjoyed Swahib. Lovely guy. You have seen the wonderful things that he's doing. He's very young, so I thought that he will. It will be nice for him to show his job to people outside Pakistan. And well, any more questions, comments, anything you can say? If not, you have here my email. In case you want to write me to say something, you can write my email. You can send me a private message on the WhatsApp group. Either or, I will be very happy to respond and continue this chat offline.
Thank you, Paul.
You're very welcome, Francisco. Carry on with the. Let's crack on and let's bring back beautiful architecture to Bogota. You are very welcome, Nicole. I mean, I hope that all this has been interesting, that you have got everything. You have made a very valid question, and I have realized a lot that in Brazil, not only Brazil, recently, there has been a very modernist black cash to say, oh, no, no, we are the only ones holding social housing. We are the only ones doing social housing. I think that here, everyone has given you ideas about different type of social housing that are not necessarily modernist. So I hope that you also spread the message when you are in those debates at the school. Any more comments?
Pablo, just one thing
Yes.
before we.
Yeah.
In the next session, may I show you two things? One mini project that I was thinking for the project that you told us to do for the salon.
Oh yes.
I was planning to do. I thought that was fun. It would be fun to revisit my first project that I did in architecture school and give it a classical language twist, let's say.
That's
And I did a sketch. I did a sketch 1 year ago, a small sketch, and the terrain is very. I think it's very complicated. So I would like just show you to see where could go. And also, I would like to ask you to review the Belfast competition, my entry.
Of course. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do that next week.
Yeah, yeah, of course, next week, of course.
Or if you want to do it in private, we speak offline and we agree one day and we do it.
No,
It's,
we can do it in Salon. No
yeah, yeah.
problem.
It's totally up to you. I mean, we did the revision of your of the Gran Via one offline, so I'm happy to do it online or
Yeah.
offline.
hmm This time I tried to apply a classical language, and I modeled everything by hand digitally, of course. So yeah, this one I would like to also have your opinion and see where it could grow.
Perfect.
But yeah, that's it.
I'm looking forward to it. And the rest of you, see you in 2 weeks. Stay tuned to the group chat, and let's continue the debate there. So until
Of
then,
course.
the recording will be available soon. I don't know how soon. We'll see. I need to
hmm
upload the video, and then Alvaro needs to upload into YouTube. But I think that through the website, I mean, he uploads all these um, video instructions so that you can see me making bold statement if you upload the video. So, but of course, thank you, Alvaro, for all the work that you're doing with this. And I'll see every rest of you in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much and have a good time. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.